Okay, you guys need to let me know if you hear this. So Olga says no sound. I don't know why this is then.
Name on the board. I'm Mary Ruart. I am the chair of the JC.
Let me know if that changed anything.
Led with that. Apologies. We have here the other members of the JC, some of which are not yet present, but we have Jim Turney, Alicia Matson, Vermin Supreme. Also joining us, hopefully, will be D. Frank Robinson.
Okay, perfect.
And Tom Arnold. I'm drawing a blank. There's one
Chuck
more.
Moulton just now joined.
Alicia, are you wanting to speak up on that?
I was letting you know Chuck Moulton just joined, so he's
Okay.
here now.
I thought maybe you did since you unmuted yourself. Okay.
Yes, sorry, I'm late.
Chuck, of course. Chuck is here too. Okay, he is here. Okay, I was just going to say Chuck isn't here, but he is. Okay. So we may be joined by other people as well. The principals in the appeals were asked to provide a list of people that they want to be able to testify on their behalf. And Tyler, let me ask you, is there any one that you think might not have given you the names that you need for unmuting people?
I can unmute on the fly as you recognize people, but I have.
Oh, we're not hearing you, Tyler.
Hello? Can you hear me?
At least
There'll be no more spoon clank, so don't worry about that.
I can hear Tyler.
Okay,
right.
I'm not hearing Tyler, so I'm concerned that maybe all of a sudden I'm not hearing anybody.
Earlier, I think when I
Alicia,
started
can you speak to me so I can see? I'm not hearing you for some reason.
testing audio, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, hang on. I think I see what the problem is. Okay, try now.
Can you hear us
Okay.
now?
Yes, sorry, I had my other side muted and didn't realize it. Okay.
Well, I was responding to your question in saying that I'm not sure I have received lists per se, but that I am happy to open microphones as the committee recognizes people from the various sides. Just let me know whose microphone I'm opening, and that's easy enough to do on the fly.
Okay, great. And so if anyone does want to, if any of the principals want to bring another person in to testify, just speak up and we'll try to arrange that. Okay, so those are my introductory comments, and the way I intend to proceed is I am going to ask each of my JC members to ask the questions that they want to ask. We'll go in rotation. I do have a few questions, but I think they probably will be covered by my JC members. If they're not, when my JC members are out of questions, I will ask the few that I have that might not have been covered. So that's how I intend to proceed. So, like I said, we have, as far as I can tell, we have 4 of the JC members and myself, 5. I think we're missing a couple still. And that may be because I can't see everybody on the screen right now. So I'm going to check. I'm going to scroll through and see, make sure. Okay, it looks like we don't have quite everybody, and I'm not sure why, but we will go ahead and proceed. As I said, we're recording this, so we hopefully will get everything in. If we don't today, we will adjourn to next Sunday at 3 p.m. So I am going to ask Alicia if she has a question that she would like to address to any of the principals involved. And Alicia, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Are we doing presentations by the parties first and then
Yes.
questions after?
We can do that if they so choose. Usually there's a limited time for that. So, and we didn't, the JC did not have a prior meeting to this meeting to decide how much we wanted to do that. And Alicia, I think you know probably better, you and Chuck know better than anyone what a good time would be. And do you want to suggest one?
At the prior hearing, I believe we did 15 minutes per side.
I think that's about what it was. So, and let's ask the principals involved, who I believe are Whitney Bilyeu, Bill Hines, and we're also going to be hearing from Will McVeigh.
Hi, this is Bill Hines. I'd just like to say that I'd like to add Amy Lepore to my team.
I'm sorry, could you say that again, Bill? I missed part of that.
Okay, yeah, I would like to add Amy Lepore to my team as a speaker.
Okay. No problem. Okay. And does anybody other than the principals want to do that?
I'm looking.
May have Jen Moore join later to speak to one particular aspect of all this, but that's not
Okay.
necessarily the case.
Okay.
And Mr. Molman will be speaking for the LNC too.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Whitney. Okay.
Can I speak for himself?
A
Alrighty,
JC
so,
member is speaking for the LNC? That's
I
completely
think probably
inappropriate.
the way to do this is to have the two appellants speak first, and that will give the LNC, the respondent in both cases, a chance to address both. So the LNC will actually have a little bit more time because they will have the ability to respond to both parties. Of course, we don't need to take all that time if we don't want to. It's totally up to us. And if you want to reserve some of your 15 minutes for a later rebuttal, that is okay too. In fact, I would recommend that you do that because you may hear something from the LNC that you want to rebut. So my suggestion, and it's only a suggestion, is that you keep your remarks limited to whatever time you truly need so you have some rebuttal time. So I think because we heard, I think first from Bill Hines submitting his appeal, that he should be the first one to go ahead and speak. And
Bill
as you can
Hines
see,
wasn't the
Tyler
first
has
one
put
to
up on the
submit his
screen a
appeal.
little
Will
clock so you
McVeigh
can
was.
keep track of where you are.
She's confused here.
Go ahead, Bill. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to bring Amy Lepore into the conversation because we've prepped her to present for us. So if we could unmute Amy and bring her in.
Yeah,
Looks
I
like-
am here, Bill.
Great. Okay, so would you like to begin or? All right. Amy?
Sorry about that, Bill. I was muted again. You are welcome to give an overview, and then I'm happy to jump into our presentation.
All right. So I think an overview is, the overview is very well covered in my letter that I submitted to the JC. Basically, we had a group of folks in the LPD go outside the bounds of our normal operations and present a bylaw change that nobody would rightfully have presented or voted on. It was purposefully hidden from a majority of the board, and then it was activated, executed, and these folks in a 5-minute meeting removed a majority of the board from the LPD board. They said they did this in the bounds of our operating rules, and they did not. They also did not operate ethically or in a libertarian principled fashion at all. And this happened October 1st. We've been arguing, fighting to get this corrected outside of Delaware. A meeting on feelings are that majority of the LNC members themselves did not even review the evidence prior to that meeting of the 21st of November. And due to that, there was no resolution out of that meeting. So what we're looking for is reparation so that the LNC recognizes the duly elected board as it stood on October 1st prior to these illegitimate changes that were made by this group of rogue actors. Amy, do you want to say anything else?
Yeah, no, Bill, that was a fine overview. And Dr. Reward, if you'd like, I'm happy to kind of jump into the information we wanted to share this evening.
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you. First, thank you to the Judicial Committee for taking up this appeal and for the time that we'll spend together this evening. Certainly, Bill and I combined, we will not have spoken for 15 minutes. I do want to set aside some time to address any additional points that come up. But you know, our appeal was with regard to constructive disaffiliation. So I want to start by saying that our preferred outcome in November was that the LNC told the truth, that the LNC should have affirmed for the members in Delaware that they recognize only the duly elected board, and that's the chairman Bill Hines and the board that serves with him. So their failure in November, their willingness to ignore the will of libertarians in Delaware really has set into motion a series of events that never should have occurred and certainly have made the LP look even more unprofessional and amateur than anyone could have even conjured up in their imagination. So while we accept the outcome of the December decision to hold dueling conventions, we do not accept it as legitimate, just, you know, really a second-class solution, a better-than-nothing alternative for our delegates who pleaded with the LNC to do the right thing in November. So I imagine the Judicial Committee and anyone listening here understands just how disgusting and demeaning it was to our members, to Delaware libertarians, that the LP would give equal footing to a gang of frauds, people whose actions are quite literally, as the chair of LPD brought up here already, kind of the antithesis of libertarianism. But my purpose with you right now is to really talk a little bit about constructive disaffiliation. So I'm happy to move on to that. So I'm aware that the LNC has made the argument that we were not constructively disaffiliated in November. And their argument that it did not occur is based on their statement of equal treatment of two groups. In their response, they wrote that regarding the claim of constructive disaffiliation, unlike Wagner, the LNC specifically did not choose a side to empower and is specifically treating both claimed leadership groups equally until the matter is resolved. And this is unequivocally false, and here's why. If so, if this is the case, if we are being treated equally, then why does the LNC affiliate link for Delaware go solely to the fraudulent board's website? Why have we never been offered the opportunity to share the official LPD site? I'll go a step further. Directing people to a fraudulent website that seeks donations and providing no disclaimer is a step too close to complicity for my liking, if I may say so, as a dues-paying member myself. Why should our Delaware dues-paying members, many of whom petitioned LNC members to act in accordance with procedural and ethical standards not be told the truth that at a minimum, there is a dispute in Delaware about leadership? Why should Delaware donors continue to give money and never have the LNC warn them that the organization linked to falsely represents Delaware and may not be legitimate? Instead, the LNC has chosen to represent a fraudulent board as the official board, as evidenced by linking to its website and by providing a link to its convention. So not only did they fail to honor really a presumption of legitimacy of the board that the members elected at our June convention, the LNC is either intentionally or as a matter of incompetence really failing any reasonable test of whether or not they treated both sides equally, completely dismantling their argument that we were not constructively disaffiliated. So I'll pause here and I want to reiterate that we did not want to be disaffiliated. And still today, I would urge this judicial committee to require the LNC to recognize the duly elected board. But it is reasonable to argue that we have been constructively disaffiliated, even though I'm not a huge fan of that term. But I think it is reasonable to make the argument based simply on the fact that the LNC can recognize no more than one state level affiliate party in any one state. You know those words better than I do. At the point where the LNC treated the fraudulent board like they had any claim to legitimacy, this bylaw and any chance of leaning on it for their future arguments was shattered. So Dr. Word, I'll stop there. I know there may be questions, there may be places where Chairman Hines wants to weigh in, but I'll stop there for now.
Okay, and Mr. Hines, do you wish to say anything further?
No, I think Amy did a great job of presenting that argument. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and stop the clock. I see Tyler has already anticipated it. Thank you, Tyler. And now we're going to turn to Mr. McVeigh and whoever he wishes to work with him.
Good afternoon. So the first thing I want to do is clarify the scope of what it is that we're talking about here. The Libertarian Party of Delaware is an autonomous organization. We are affiliated with the National Party, and that affiliation is what we're discussing. The Judicial Committee, the LNC, has no authority whatsoever to change the leadership or the bylaws of the Libertarian Party of Delaware. That authority is reserved to the Libertarian Party of Delaware. Now, what we're talking about is the constructive disaffiliation that was brought about by the motion passed by the LNC on December 5th. In that motion, they essentially said that the Libertarian Party of Delaware must hold a mass meeting, and based on the results of that mass meeting, or alternatively based on the attendance levels of two competing mass meetings, the National Party will determine its affiliation at that point. That is not the process that is spelled out in the bylaws for disaffiliation. It is within the time frame that is not allowed to do disaffiliations prior to the convention. That motion is invalid, and I believe my fellow appellants here actually agree with me on that front, that that motion is invalid. The LNC does not have that authority, if I read their brief correctly. So that's what we're talking about here, is the affiliation of the Delaware Party, not the leadership of the party. The National Party has no authority there, and we will not recognize any authority there. But I would like to preserve our affiliation with the National Party. We've been part of the National Party since 1975, I believe, if I know my history correctly. And we would like to maintain that affiliation. We would like to continue fighting for a free world in our lifetime. But at the same time, we are not going to be bossed around by the National Party. We're going to select our leadership ourselves in accordance with our own bylaws. Now, there's been some distractions here about what bylaws are in the state level and who the chair is at the state level, but that's for the state to work out. And a lot of inaccurate information has been presented on that front, but I'm not going to sit here and try to litigate that because it is outside the scope of the Judicial Committee and the entire National Party's authority to adjudicate that. Thank you.
And Mr. McVeigh, do you want to have anyone else speak at this time?
No, that's it.
Okay. And you've got some time left, as you can see on the clock, and we will go ahead and turn the podium over to Whitney Bylaw the chair of the National Party. And Whitney, you have a little more time since we're actually doing 2 appeals here, and the LNC is the respondent on both. And of course, you can defer to Ken Mulliman or whoever you wish to defer to.
Oh,
Thank you, Dr. Rohr. It's Bill Yu. Also, you did say it correctly earlier.
My
oh,
apologies,
come
Whitney.
on, Whitney.
Do have some trouble with names.
Mary forgot, it messed
No
up my
problem.
name multiple
As I
times
said,
on my hearing. I didn't say a
Mr. Molman,
thing.
if you could be unmuted.
I thought she said Chuck Moulton was speaking on behalf. Ken Moulton is perfectly appropriate. Chuck Moulton would not have been
There it goes.
appropriate.
Yeah,
My
I'm here.
mistake.
All right.
All right. Thank you all for being here today. I apologize to the Judicial Committee for being called into action yet again this term. We all know that there are things that we could be doing besides this.
Yeah,
but
you
we
could
do
be
have
you
the
could be
important
censoring Joshua
business of the party
Smith.
to attend
You could be
to.
removing him.
As you just heard, there are 2 groups that claim to be the legitimate leadership of the Libertarian Party of Delaware. And we, as the LNC, are kind of in a quandary as to what to do about that. The bylaws have us limited. We can't disaffiliate. The Judicial Committee ruling out of the Oregon situation
I'm not happy that
doesn't
Ken
let
is
us pick
speaking
a
on
side.
behalf of the LNC.
That was one of the key items in that decision, was that constructive disaffiliation occurred because the LNC chose a side. So the question is, should we even choose a side anyway? What makes up a political party? Is it the person who holds the title of chair, or is it the members? From the LNC's perspective, and based on the motion that was passed,
This is a good argument.
a
he's
party is
making
made up
here.
of its members.
This is a good argument here. I didn't come up
And
with
that
this.
is why we passed the motion that we did.
Well, he's not going where I want him to go.
There were a couple of items brought up in the first speech there by Ms. Lepore about the website and the lack of a notation of a dispute. I do believe that is a legitimate point, one that we had not, at least I have not previously heard. And I would think that the motion that has been passed already by the LNC would more than cover that, and
But they
that
didn't
we
do
can
it.
rectify that particular disparity. The question of whether or not we can force a convention, we certainly cannot force the Libertarian Party of Delaware, its members, to do anything. We are a party built upon the lack of force. And as such, we have put forth a motion that simply suggests a way to resolve this dispute. If we ask each of the plaintiffs here today, they'll each say that they are the legitimate leadership of the party. We, as the LNC, even if we wanted to, we can't decide that at this point based upon the bylaws and based upon previous Judicial Committee ruling.
That's wrong.
So there's only one avenue to resolve this,
Ken-
and that is the members of the Libertarian Party of Delaware themselves.
Ken is talking differently than he talked to me
And
on
so
the
that
phone.
is what
I
the
am
motion
very
attempts
disappointed in
to
Ken right now.
suggest. We provide for one potential avenue for the members to take. We are not commanding it.
Very disappointed in
But
Ken.
it is something within the rules. It is something within Robert's Rules of Order, known as the mass meeting. And as such, that's why we suggested it.
And why he would taint
Party, the
himself
LP
with defending
Delaware,
this LNC.
can continue in its current state if they so choose. If
Just
the members
lost.
want to leave it with a membership
It's
dispute,
not permanent. I
so
love
be it.
Ken, but
if the members of the Libertarian Party of
he took a
Delaware
big
want to
hit
move to
with-
litigation
big
and
hit with me
fight a
right
court
now.
battle like they did in Oregon for a decade, so be it.
no.
At the end of the day, the LNC at this point in time has no other option. We literally have no other option than to
Ken.
treat both sides equally
Bullshit.
until such time as we
Bullshit.
are out of this 6-month period.
Bullshit.
The next LNC comes along.
Oh
or the
my
convention
God,
body
Ken.
itself,
No,
because
you're
they are the
full of
ultimate
shit.
authority. makes a decision to the contrary.
Oh God,
We're
I
locked
can't
out
wait.
right
I
now
can't wait
as the LNC.
to do my after show commentary. Ken, I am so fucking
There are
disappointed
a
in
couple
you
of
right
things
now.
that were brought up, and I just want to note the objections.
Yeah, he didn't have
that
to
we had brought
agree to do
forward,
that, Cherry Pie.
about some secondary items.
He didn't have to do that. He
were in one
voted
of the
against all of these
petitioner's
motions. He volunteered to do this.
briefs. And I want to note that the role of the LNC, insofar as choosing a regional representative or alternate,
Now, he's right on
that
this
is not
point.
within our scope.
He is right on this point.
We are a deliberative body as defined by Robert's Rules of Order. That's sections 1.6 through 1.9 and also 122 through 123. And as such, any decision must be a decision of the entire LNC. Even if one of our members acted inappropriately, which to my knowledge and understanding has not occurred. But even if they had, it would not be an action of the LNC because there was no vote to do so.
At this point,
Nor
Ken is right.
is any individual member of the LNC empowered to act in such a way that would determine the outcome of an election of a region representative or regional alternate. So that is outside of our scope and why we object to that
But I am going
particular
to really
item.
break down that first part of what he
Other
said
than that,
because that was
I think-
horrifying. I am horrified on
I think I
behalf
can
of
yield back a whole
Colorado
lot of our time,
at what
because
Ken
at the
just
end
said.
of the day, there's
earlier.
just not a lot that we can do here as the LNC. And I'm happy to answer any questions. If the members of the Judicial Committee have additional questions after this hearing, of course, the LNC is here to answer those via
If I
email
were a
or other
hothead,
means, whatever
which I
is
know you guys,
necessary
some
for
of
the
you think
Judicial
I
Committee to
am,
make
I'm
their
not.
decision.
If I
Again, I
were a
apologize
hothead,
that
I'd
you
be
guys have been
screaming
put
that
into this
Colorado
position
should
yet again
disaffiliate over
to
this.
be called into action
What he
again this
just
year.
said is such a
But,
misrepresentation of
hopefully
what
we
the
can resolve
LNC
this
can
quickly
do. Not this last segment. He's
move
right
on
on
to
this.
the business of getting people elected.
But his
so that we
first
can see
5
liberty
minutes
in
are
our
awful.
lifetimes. Thank you.
Well, and thank you. Whitney, is there anyone else you want to speak on behalf of the LNC?
Where's my phone? I gotta text him.
Whitney, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I couldn't unmute myself. No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you have quite a bit of time left should you need to respond or rebut anything else that is said. Okay, well, I think I want to first thank everyone for being very concise. That's going to help us out here, I think. And it is now time for the Judicial Committee to ask questions if they wish. I'm going to start with Alicia if she has questions, and she can go ahead and address them to whoever she chooses, and then we'll move on to other members and do a round robin like we did last time.
I do have several questions. I'm trying to decide which to start with. All right, let's start with a question for all three parties to address.
Don't know if you can see this.
The national
You can't.
bylaws give the LNC power to create an affiliate,
I said to Ken,
to
wow,
disaffiliate.
I have to say you defending the LNC here
Article
is a
10.4
fucking blow. It's an about
requires
face
the
from
national
everything you
secretary
said
send
to me.
delegate allocations
His
to the
response
chair
can explain later.
of each
I don't
affiliate.
think, no, I've gotten too many of that.
So if there is a dispute,
I'll talk to him. I love Ken.
say it
but
wasn't this dispute, hypothetically 10 people all
you
claiming
guys don't
I'm
know
the
the
chair
private
of affiliate
conversations we
X.
had. This is a fucking about face. I am
Isn't it
pissed.
inherently within the LNC's purview to look at circumstances, look at the entity's rules,
Alicia's
and
right.
determine to whom they're going to send the delegate allocations?
See,
Don't they
Alicia's
have
right
to
here
know
because she's not
who
trying
the
to get
chair
revenge
is
for me beating her by 20
and
points,
to respect
which
the
make
affiliate
no mistake,
autonomy
that's
that
what her
requires
decision against
applying the
me
organization's
was
own
all
rules,
about. She was
doesn't it?
ass mad.
I'd like all three to address that.
She's right here.
I'm going to ask Mr. Hines to start.
No. Get
Okay,
Amy. Amy. Oh
I'm
God.
sorry, trying to recapture. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Amy, please.
And I don't know if it would help for you to take a peek at National Bylaws Article 10.4, but my point is the national, or rather the LNC has specific powers in the bylaws to create affiliates, to disaffiliate them, and it requires them to interact with the affiliates allocations to the chair of each affiliate. So if there just is a dispute about who the chair is in any given affiliate, doesn't the LNC have to decide who the chair of the affiliate is in order to comply with the
She's
bylaws?
spoon feeding.
I would argue yes, and
Please let Dr. Lepore speak.
yes, that's the final answer. I mean, you can't have
I
10 chairs
love
sending
Bill
10
Hines,
sets of delegates. to
but
a
Dr.
convention,
Amy
right?
Lepure is an excellent speaker.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McVeigh?
Yeah, so with particular regard to the example that you provided regarding delegate allocations, I think that's one very easy example where you actually don't need to make a decision. You can very easily send those delegate allocations to any claiming chair, or you can post them publicly. I believe that's the way it's currently handled, is that they're effectively posted to the LNC business list at the end of the day. So everybody is able to access those delegate allocations, and who particularly you send them to or don't send them to doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. Now, if you wanted to get off into the weeds in it, you could say that if you've sent those delegate allocations to the wrong chair, however you choose to define that at the time, the right chair would then have a case before the Judicial Committee for constructive disaffiliation, saying, hey, you're supposed to send me the delegate allocations. I'm the rightful chair of the affiliate and I didn't get them. That suggests that I'm being disaffiliated here, or our state is being disaffiliated. So I don't think that it means
Guess
that the
what?
LNC has the
The
authority
LNC didn't
to
send
decide
it to
who's
anybody.
the chair.
I did.
It imposes a risk if they interact with the wrong affiliate.
And
that
I
the
sent
right
them to
affiliate
Bill
says,
Hines.
Hey, you're constructively disaffiliating us.
And somebody else
But I don't
added
think that
Will
that
McVeigh to the
implies
conversation, so he
a
got them too.
obligation to choose a chair for the LNC.
That was Archie Flower who added Will.
Well, let's, I know, I realize you described this as getting off in the weeds, but the very next part of the bylaws are about, the credentials committee accepting delegate lists. So the implication of, deciding who the chair is lets the credentials committee know from whom they're supposed to accept delegates and seat them, initially. And we all know that challenges can come up on the convention floor, but how can the LNC know that they've sent it to the chair if they don't know who the chair is?
I just have a hard time
Like I
listening
said,
to
it's one of
Alicia
those
after
risks
what she
that they
pulled
take.
with
If they
me,
send it to the
which
wrong
was
person,
so
then the right
obviously
person can say, hey, I'm
revenge,
being constructively
because she's
disaffiliated
such a
because you're
smart
supposed to
woman and
send me
such
this
a
and you
good
didn't.
secretary.
But like I said, I think in reality at this point, since it's
But-
public, it's hard for anyone to say they didn't get them. Now, with respect to your particular issue regarding the Credentials Committee, I believe an initial draft of this motion instructed the Credentials Committee to do something, and that was ultimately stricken from the motion on the basis that the Credentials Committee is an independent committee formed by the bylaws, not a committee that answers to the LNC. So the LNC doesn't tell
They
the
need to let
Credentials Committee
Lepure
to do
speak
anything.
'cause,
It's
she's
ultimately
a
the Credentials
better
Committee
speaker,
acting
and Will
independently
McVeigh has a
that
silver
makes the
tongue.
determination, okay, who are we supposed to credential? And then they make that report to the convention as a whole, and the convention as a whole decides who is to
And
be
I'm sorry if
credentialed
I
as
seem a
a-
little like
So again, it doesn't fall to the
sedated.
LNC to say
I am,
you're the
because I
affiliate
got off
and
of
you're
a
not.
plane full of Valium.
It falls to, in this
The
case,
plane
the
wasn't full of
Credentials
Valium.
Committee
I
and
was
then
full
the
of
convention
Valium.
as a whole. So I'm still not seeing any obligation implied there, when obviously there isn't one that's explicit, implied even for the LNC to have to say you're the real affiliate and you're not.
So, well, I guess I'm not really confused. It seems that you're just saying we'll just fling the list out to the world and hope the chair or the rightful chair gets it, and then you complied with the bylaws, which they sent it to the chair. But in reality,
see
we
Amy's
would have
hand up.
chaos at our conventions if the Credentials Committee could not rely on knowing who the identity of the chairs are, correct?
I'm wondering what Ken's going to
And-
try to do to,
Thankfully, this
to
isn't a common
explain this to
occurrence.
me.
And
Ken and
Well,
I have
it's
had
more
hours
common
of
than we would
conversation
like it
about
to be,
this,
right?
and this is an
for
about
sure,
face.
for sure. But again, at the end of the day, it's one of the challenges.
And
I
I
think,
already
of-
have trust
of running an
issues.
organization, the way that our bylaws are structured, is that at the
Bad
end of the day, you're
trust issues.
supposed to have a certain set of delegates from each affiliate state, and it is incumbent ultimately on the convention itself to determine
Do
who
not
are
like
the
feeling betrayed.
legitimately credentialed delegates from each state. And thankfully, in
He
most
could have
cases,
called and given me a
I-
heads up
I
that this is
believe,
what
at
he was
least I
going to
hope,
do.
in
I feel
49
fucking betrayed.
out of 50 cases this year in Reno, it will be very easy, and this one may be complicated. I think it's pretty straightforward, but then I'm looking at it from the point of view of somebody who believes they followed their bylaws and is a continuous organization with the same one that showed up in Orlando last year or 2 years ago.
Okay, and then same question to the LNC then. Mr. Molman, speaking for the LNC, suggested he didn't think that they had power to pick a side, but my question is, doesn't this bylaw basically require you to know who the chairs are so you can comply with bylaws?
Actually, Mr. McVeigh made a lot of the point I was going to make. We are in a position where our bylaws, as I've stated, don't leave us a lot of room to make such decisions. We have, the LNC has, in not necessarily a motion, but in the discussion around the motion, been very concerned with the rules of autonomy, about the specific bylaw that says that our state parties are autonomous. And in all of that, I think the discussion has essentially come down, and Ms. Mattson, I know you are aware of this, that ultimately these type of disputes can and have been resolved on the convention floor. You know, the thing I would say about this is that our rules are not perfect. Our bylaws are loose in a number of areas, and loose rules are fine until there's a dispute. And then things get ugly. And I think that this situation generally, as I mute my phone, I apologize.
That's me texting him
I
that
think
he
this
had to mute.
situation generally is such that
I'm done texting him.
just another example of why it is important to pass rules, to have rules that give more clear guidance than what we have today. We are supposed to only recognize one affiliate,
what he was
but we're not
reading,
supposed to pick a
and
side,
I'm happy.
but we're supposed to respect
I
autonomy.
said, I'll hear you out, Ken.
And
But what you're saying here is the
while I
exact opposite
personally
of what you said
would
to
say,
me.
sure, let's look at
And
their
I very
rules.
understandably
I don't
already
believe
have
we
bad
have the
trust issues with
ability
this
to do
LNC.
because of the
I feel like
autonomy
Amy and I
clause.
trusted you and are
That
getting fucked over.
What they do inside of
That's what I
Delaware
said to Ken.
is not what the LNC can
But I won't
rule
bother him
upon.
anymore.
It's they are our affiliate or they are not, and as such, we have decided they are our affiliate, and the only question to the LNC or for the LNC
Defending a
is
corrupt
who is
LNC is
who is the
unforgivable.
leadership of that affiliate.
And Alicia, I should mention that Amy has her hand up. I think she wants to chime in on this and maybe could be helpful. And Ken, but before I go to Amy, Ken, did you have more to say? I want to make sure I didn't interrupt you.
Deep breath.
No, I am all set. Thank you. Unless there's a follow-up, of course.
Deep breath.
Okay. Go ahead, Amy. You were going to share something.
Thank you, Dr. Roy, and I will speak briefly, but I want to kind of reaffirm Delaware's position here.
Oh, I love how she
understand
said
it is
Delaware's
a difficult position
position.
for the LNC to be in, and that it is a challenging decision to have to make when there is a dispute of this nature. And it feels a little bit like the LNC likes to exercise its leadership and authority role when times are convenient.
Ah,
like they
I
don't
love
like
you.
it when things are sticky or messy, and that's not what leadership looks like. So I want to affirm really from Delaware's standpoint that the LNC makes a decision every day about who they recognize as an affiliate. When it links to websites, as it has done in the case of the fraudulent board, when it shares events and conventions from its events page,
I love her.
when it grants access to its CRM, and when it takes information from delegates.
I really feel like Amy and
delegate
I
votes
just got stabbed
after
in the
each
back
and every convention.
by
The LNC makes a decision.
Ken, and if you're wondering why I'm so personally invested in this, I helped Amy and Bill write their brief.
And again,
so I'm not a party, but I'm as close to being a party as you can be. And I feel fucking stabbed in the back.
Likes to exercise its authority when it is convenient, and now when things are messy, and when the membership
they
of
throw
Delaware
up their hands,
looks to them for leadership. We feel kind of a backing away of the exercise of that authority. So Delaware's position is, again, every single day the LNC
and I'll
is
share
making
with
that
you
decision.
guys what Ken says to me if
November
he gives me
21st as well.
permission. But I'm upset with him.
Thanks, Amy. Alicia,
Thank you, CJ.
Are you complete on this? Or I guess maybe I should also ask people who are responding, Mr. Hines, McVeigh, the LNC, is there anything further on that? I don't see anyone unmuting their mics, so I assume that those answers are complete. And Alicia, are you complete on the question you asked?
I think they have completed the answers they want to give me. So let's go ahead and rotate to the next JC member, since this has taken a lot of time for this one question.
Okay, thank you, Alicia.
Alicia's normally great.
Jim
she was
Turney,
awful with me because it was personal.
All right, hello everyone.
Alicia's smart as a whip.
My question is to at least the two appellants, rather than so much the LNC, but I'm reading right now from the reply brief from Will McVeigh, and I wanted to get the reaction of both sides on this. It says, Mr. Hines was offered the chance to chair a meeting of the LPD board as it previously stood. At this amply noticed meeting, he and other board members were offered the chance to fully participate and vote, including raise points of orders, have rulings of the chair to appeal those rulings to the body. He chose not to participate.
Because it was already after
Mr.
they
Hines,
threw him off.
Is that correct? And what is your view of, was this meeting amply noticed? Did you feel like you would be able to fully participate? What is your reaction to that quote?
No. Yes, we were invited to Mr. McVeigh's meeting.
Alicia knows
we
that
did not.
Will is
So Mr.
bullshit.
McVeigh had already removed us from his board. And once that happened, we did not acknowledge anything he does going forward from October 1st as legitimate to the LPD. So we're not going to join an illegitimate meeting just to satisfy him. And that's why we did not attend.
So it sounds to me like, I want to make sure I understand this though, that you would disagree with the first sentence of that statement, which says Mr. Hines was offered the chance to chair a meeting of the LPD board as it previously stood. So that meant you would have been chairing the meeting. It would have been the October 1st board members.
I can't believe that Jim
So
Turney's
it would have been
buying
in
this
effect
bullshit.
your board meeting.
No,
and
after all those actions, it's not.
I'm
in
wondering
effect
if that's
his
the way
board.
it looked to you, not because you just
No.
characterized it as his meeting.
Yeah, no, it did not look that way to us. To begin with, were we invited to a meeting in October? Yes, but the terms of reestablishing the board, that was not part of the terms of that meeting, to my understanding.
Okay. Anything else you want to say on that before I ask Mr. McVeigh to give his thoughts about his statement and yours?
No, actually, well, yes, one more thing. So what Mr. McVeigh did after he made the changes he made on October 1st. Well, first, it should be noted two things. One, Mr. McVeigh singly owns all the credentials to the LPD social media accounts. And two, Mr. McVeigh is the single administrator of the Discord server that LPD business was being done in at that time. And what he did to mock us was created a channel called Fake LPD or something along those lines, where he humorously said we could operate. So we did not take any offer of his seriously to adjudicate the matter at a meeting.
Sort of a follow-up to that before I ask Mr. McVeigh's comments. Have you, because you believe you were inappropriately, as I understand it, you believe you were inappropriately removed as chair and some other members of the board were removed?
Yes, totally.
Have you tried
Thank you,
to
Shannon. I just saw that.
reconstitute
Thank you.
or continue, I guess is the right word, continue to meet as chair with the board as it stood on October 1st? Have you called any meetings and,
yes, we did.
tried to get out the word and as best you could without, let's say, full access to whatever channels you might have preferred?
So yes, we scheduled and had a fourth quarter LPD meeting. LPD is required to have quarterly board meetings. We invited the board members from the McVeigh group, and none of them attended our meeting.
Okay.
Now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Cut my finger. Great.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure you were complete and finished, because I'll move over to get some other folks. Maybe I should ask if Amy wants to say anything as part of your answer from your side to this, because I see her hand up, and then I'll go to Mr. McVeigh and Whitney Billieu.
Thank you, Jim. I think I can add just two quick things. I want to read to you from the meeting notice that
Amy.
Mr. McVeigh put forward in his attempt to be able to sit here and say to you tonight he tried to get the board back together. And I would reiterate what Bill said, which is we absolutely have attempted to meet with the board members elected in June several times. But there has been a course of discipline in Kent County and at the state level. And Sean Goward, the immediate past chair, has administered that process for LPD and for Kent County. And so, Jim, I would really ask, I'm going to read something to you real quick. I would really encourage the JC to hear from Sean tonight on what that process has looked like. It's something that you need to know about that has occurred here in Delaware. But again, I want to read to you from the meeting notice. Here's what Mr. McVeigh said. He said, of course they were removed. But if they'd like to join the meeting on Discord and play pretend, that would be fun and we can humor them. The result will be the same.
Okay.
People who have committed fraud and people who have conducted themselves in such an unprincipled and unprofessional way, and then seek to try to convince you that they have called a forthright meeting and use that kind of language should be laughed at. It should not even be something we consider tonight.
God, I love her.
Thank you for your time. Again, I would encourage you to speak with Sean Goward.
All right, maybe we can get him on.
Thank you.
And thank you, Amy. Mr. McVeigh, I see your hand up. Can you speak to these this point in your reply brief and also the comments that you've just heard, I hope, from Bill and Amy?
Yes, I can. So as Mr. Hines mentioned correctly, the Libertarian Party of Delaware State Board is required by its bylaws to hold quarterly meetings. However, those quarterly meetings are not scheduled in advance. It doesn't say, you know, the second month of each quarter on the first Monday at 7 or anything like that. So the way that has been traditionally handled is that we pass a motion to schedule the meeting. And that is backed up by Robert's Rules of Order when it says that, you know, organizations have to have regular meetings, but the regular time and place is not fixed. So that's how we've traditionally done that. I believe it was October 15th, somewhere around the middle of October, we passed a motion to schedule our Q4 meeting on November 20th. And this also brings up something that Mr. Hines said earlier in his introductory statements, talking about there's no way a majority would vote for this and a majority was removed. That's patently false. That is easily verifiably false. There were 3 people who were removed out of a 10-person, at that point 9-person, because our secretary had voluntarily resigned earlier in the week. So 3 people were removed, which is nowhere near a majority. That was supported by 5 people, who is the majority at that point, all of whom were elected in June. So a majority supported the removal. A majority supported the motion to schedule the Q4 meeting in November on the 20th. And a majority then at that point affirmed, ratified all of the decisions that were made on October 1st. So we did invite the removed individuals from the state board to participate, because they had raised a number of procedural complaints that honestly I feel are quibbling, pedantic attempts to cling to power. But on the off chance that they held any merit, we wanted to make sure that they were properly addressed. So we provided as much notice as we possibly could, made sure that notice was distributed amply, made a new notice for the bylaw change as required under our bylaws to provide notice, made sure everybody saw that, and went through as rigorously pedantic a process as we could to make sure that there were no procedural complaints that could be raised about the ratification of the actions that took place on October 1st. Now, of course, I mocked them because I think their complaints were ridiculous to start with. I think that a lot of the language they're using here tonight is pretty ridiculous to start with, you know, talking about a fraudulent board and people who've committed fraud and blah, blah, blah. If anybody's committing fraud at this point, by the way, it's the people who created a brand new website that didn't exist prior to, I think it wasn't even up until November. I don't know exactly when they put it up. And now are demanding that the national party switch over the Delaware affiliate link to point to their brand new website with their brand new domain, after having pointing to the same domain, which it continues to point to for 4 years as soon as we first bought our new domain and moved over from de.lp.org to lpdelaware.org. You can all check us out and find out when our convention's scheduled. And at the end of the day, a majority supported it, and a majority supported it a second time in November, having given the removed board members an opportunity to come and participate and see that no matter what procedural complaints they raise, the result will be the same. So the reason they didn't show up is because they knew they would lose again, and they would have to sit there and watch it this time. It wouldn't have any basis to claim that they didn't know it was occurring or that there were procedures not properly followed. But again, I also want to reiterate that it is not within the purview of the JC or the LNC to litigate the internal operations of the Libertarian Party of Delaware. We are an autonomous state affiliate. So, you know, we can talk about this, and if that determines the LNC's future decision at some point when they're allowed to disaffiliate a party, whether or not they want to disaffiliate the party, that's fine. But the bottom line is that these are internal Delaware issues to be sorted out amongst the Delaware party. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. And Whitney Bilyeu, would you like to address this?
The only thing I was going to ask was not ones you're looking at, just to help those of us following.
I don't know if I froze there, but I was thanking
That's
you,
all right.
Latina Libertarian.
I thought I
Thank
did.
you.
It's
Yeah,
titled
yours I think was easy enough because you referred to it specifically as the reply brief, so that was helpful. But just it made me realize that there's a bunch here that may be referenced, and I just want to ask that courtesy of you guys. Thank you.
Sure.
God, she's so
very good point.
imperious.
And I hope I was clear as to which document I was reading from.
If it was
So,
clear at that time, Whitney, then why'd you have to act like the
um,
school teacher and
I
scold
see
him?
Bill Hines' hand is up. Are you wanting to make a further comment, Bill?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yes, I am. So a couple things. In Mr. McVeigh's reply, he mentioned tradition. Tradition was that a bylaw change was reviewed by the body before it was ever posted for a vote. That did not occur here. Tradition says that you have a process to remove people, and that did not happen here either. So those are two important things. And then a third item related to Mr. McVeigh is that I would really like
Thank you,
bring in
Douglas
Sean
McConnell.
Gower
I
to
truly
speak, if we
appreciate
could,
it.
on
Oh yeah, I see he's in now and has his hand raised. He may have been in before. I didn't see it, but
I want to understand one thing that's important to us. Once Will McVeigh created his own board and
JJ, just an FYI, they have fixed terms of
it.
office, and I know the
and
LNC
there were
can't possibly agree with
multiple
this because they would
things-
show they're corrupt.
I'm sorry. There were multiple
Amy
things
and
that
Bill
happened
were
in
deserved a
relation
trial.
to this.
And same thing with Dave
Anyway,
Casey. Well, no, Dave was an officer. Amy
you
and
did
Bill
that, once
deserved
you
a
made
trial,
that
but the
break on
LNC will
October
never
1st,
hear that argument.
we, the board
they
members
have
that were
fixed
removed,
terms of
which
office.
there were 3 of us, we're
Same
not
language
removed
as
by
the
5 people. We were
national
removed by
bylaws.
2 people, Will McVeigh and Jimmy Brittingham, because he changed our bylaws with his cohorts, reaching a quorum in a meeting that was raised without notice, and that's how this happened. So,
All right.
clear that up.
We're going to have to.
No, I'm
keep
just
this
talking about the
moving here,
removal,
and
JJ.
Mr. McVeigh, I would like you to be the one to go after we have a word from Sean, but I'd like to recognize you, Sean, under the condition that you stick to process, not intentions and that sort of thing, motivations, but rather process issues that Amy Lepore referred to.
And Jim Turney's on my thing
yes,
was
sir.
sucky, so I have not good feelings.
To process.
Though he's a sweetheart of a man.
That I would like to point out, I do not have access to the Judicial Committee's reports, but one of the things that
I gotta let Mary know I never got the
Kent County
LNC
Libertarian
reply.
Party that we have seen consistently that neither competing board has changed is that they recognize Robert's Rules of Order as the primary governing document.
Good thing, Sean. Yes.
For guiding the process for both the state board meetings and for state conventions. And that being said, at Kent County, Mr. McVeigh's home county, we have investigated, we have tried.
Don't say trial to the LNC.
Presented evidence, and we have determined that Mr. McVeigh, as well as all of his other cohorts, in this process as to what they describe as the plot, they have all been considered guilty on the one charge and the 7 or 8 specifications in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order for conspiring to remove the leadership of the Libertarian Party of Delaware from its rightful board.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. McVeigh, Will, would you please wrap up my answers to my question by giving your statement?
Sure.
Anything further you want to say? I see your hand.
Just in response to the last 2 comments here, in particular, I mean, I hate to make this into an education hour on Robert's Rules of Order, but it also
you need an education, Will.
First off, though, just for Bill Hines talking about tradition, I use the words as regards to scheduling of regular meetings when a time and place is not fixed by the bylaws. And that is actually referenced in Robert's Rules of Order as what the group traditionally does. Now, when it comes to, whether or not the body reviews noticed bylaws amendments before they're voted on, that's got nothing to do with anything, and that's not a requirement in any way, shape, or form for adopting amendments. I can't remember what exactly the other thing it said that was done by tradition was, but it doesn't matter. The point is that the one thing talks about scheduling regular meetings that are not time and place fixed in the bylaws. If it is traditionally set by motion, then that's how it should be set. And that's how the Q4 meeting was set by a majority of the board for November 20th.
No.
Also, going back just briefly to what Mr. Molman said about the Libertarian Party of Delaware being governed by Robert's Rules of Order, also touching on what Mr. Goward said about the state party and the Kent County party being governed by Robert's Rules of Order. That's specifically except we're superseded by the bylaws. So the bylaws do not provide for mass meetings to choose leadership. That happens at the odd year conventions. And the bylaws do not provide for non-members to hold meetings in Kent County outside of the regular meeting time to remove other members of the party. So anything that Mr. Goward's talking about activities going on in Kent County where people have been removed, nothing like that has happened. You have to be a member to vote in Kent County meetings, and these people are not members of Kent County at this point. And You also have to hold meetings at the regularly scheduled time, which is listed in the bylaws as the third Monday of every month at 7 p.m. That is not when these activities took place. So there's just so many reasons why the removals that are being, alleged by Mr. Goward, and earlier I think Mr. Hines mentioned it also, did not ever in fact happen. So your question originally was about the regular meeting on November 20th. The bottom line is that all of these events talking about removals and whatever that happened at the county level happened after that November 20th meeting was scheduled and conducted. So the November 20th meeting was scheduled by a majority of the elected board, as it was elected in June, minus the one resignation that happened in late September. And the fact that Mr. Hines, Ms. Lepore, Mr. Casey, and Mr. Dillon chose not to show up is evidence of their knowledge of the fact that they would get creamed at that meeting, and the exact same things would happen over again that happened between October 1st and October 31st. Not that they didn't recognize the legitimacy of the board, although that's probably, I'm sure, part of it too. The bottom line is that they knew they would lose.
All right, thank you, Will. I wanted to finish with that, but we haven't heard from the LNC on the answer to this question, and I see Ken Molman has his hand raised. So Ken, would you like to give us a quick comment about my question?
I really need to settle down before I talk to Ken. I'm not lying that I am.
Mostly just what I've heard.
I feel like I'm taking another knife out of my
back and
back.
forth between the two parties, and that's why, or the two groups, I should say.
And I said to Ken, maybe I'm being a little bitch for feeling that way, but that's the way I feel.
General term, not as a capital P party. But the two groups claiming leadership. The one thing I will note is that while a mass meeting is not listed in the LPD bylaws, the mass meeting is in Robert's Rules of Order, as well as conventions, as well as meetings of the board, as well as a number of ways the society can meet. And as far as my review of the LPD bylaws, insofar as I took them, I did not see anything that prevented specifically the calling of a mass meeting. And provided that the bylaws don't have something, again, the LNC is not here to give a thorough examination of LPD's bylaws, but provided that there's nothing that specifically precludes the LPD membership from having a mass meeting in the LPD bylaws, then that is an option under Roberts, as Roberts provides as a parliamentary authority the background, the back-end processes that are then overridden by bylaws as they are passed. So as long as there is nothing in the bylaws today that says they cannot have a mass meeting or speaks to a mass meeting in a way that isn't about conventions or other things that are already covered in Roberts as well, I do believe that the mass meeting would be in order and would be allowed under Robert's Rules of Order.
He's wrong about mass meetings, by the way.
All right, thank you. And I think
grossly
I've heard
wrong.
Enough.
In my opinion. Oh, see, JJ said the same thing.
Now, so,
right, that's exactly
Dr.
what
Will,
I'm thinking,
turn it back over
JJ.
to you.
He is
Thank you, everyone,
obscenely
for
wrong
the
about
answers
mass
to my
meetings.
question. I appreciate that time.
I didn't even see your comment before I
And
commented.
I see that Ken and Sean still have their hands up. So if you really don't have
No,
anything more to
JJ,
say on
they
that,
didn't.
could you
About
lower
the
your hand?
November meeting.
And, Sean,
And the
if you do
November
have
meeting's
something
not the
more to
issue,
add
it's the
to,
October meeting
Jim
that's the
Turney's
issue.
question,
I think he misspoke and
unmute
meant
yourself and tell
October.
him what it is.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Root. I would like to state that the disciplinary process, since they are not enumerated by Delaware's Articles of Association and bylaws, are subject, in accordance with Delaware's Articles of Association and bylaws, to Robert's rules.
Oh, but the LNC ain't gonna like that argument. And the JC already said I'm not entitled to it.
Those rules of order were not followed by Mr. McVeigh and the other individuals who voted on the removal of Dr.
He's right,
Mr. Hines,
but neither the
and
JC
Mr.
or the
Casey.
LNC are going to be sympathetic to that
And
argument,
so
because
it's-
they'd have
it's
to then
really
say they were
critical to
wrong
have
about
an
me.
understanding of parliamentary procedure here, because the way our Articles of Association and bylaws are written, the only, and this is intentional, the way our articles of association and bylaws are written, we are required to only be able to remove officers for cause, and as such, in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, they have to have a fair disciplinary process that is derived with due process.
Oh, God!
And in no time during this process did the 3 individuals removed have any chance.
Now, I did have a chance to talk to
have notification of charges.
So I got more due process than they did.
They had no chance to face their accusers. They had no chance to
JJ,
present
it wasn't
a defense.
It was noticed 5 minutes before the meeting by a motion made in Discord.
Process, and they had no chance.
5 minutes notice
to be able to present to the board why they should be able to provide that process. However, and I
love you,
understand
Sean.
and acknowledge what Mr. McVeigh conveyed regarding the membership and the legitimacy of the people who removed him and 3 of our other county members from office. However, that being said, this board removed 2,161 voting libertarians in Delaware from membership and from the process of electing local candidates and electing delegates to the National Convention. They removed 2,161 members statewide from that process, including 431 individuals from Kent County. Everything that they have done, Will talks about the November 20th meeting, everything that they have done is predicated on the 1 October meeting that they had over Discord over the course of 5 minutes. 3 individuals who were elected by delegates at convention had 5 minutes to acknowledge that they were subject to being removed from office, providing a defense, providing parliamentary disagreement with the process before they were removed from office. Further,
Mr. Gallard, we're going to have to draw it to a close. You're going quite far, as valuable as it may be, you're going quite far afield of the question that I ask, and some of these things may come up later. And we're going to need Dr. Ruhr.
Well,
I would suggest that we get Mr. McVeigh to respond to, since there's been a lot of new information. So is there anything you need to say to wrap up, Sean Goward? Okay, let's, Dr. Ruhr, I suggest we hear from Will McVeigh before we end this, because there has been a significant amount of information that was not really in my question, but it's still been stated.
Yes, and I'd just like to say that as we did in the last hearing that we did, we will accept briefs for 7 days after this
I'm
hearing.
going to submit a brief after the hearing.
If next week we have a continuance of this hearing, then, we would have some extra time. So my suggestion, Sean, if you want to go into more detail, that you go ahead and submit a brief, because we will be accepting briefs. We'd rather have more information than not enough. And before Mr. McVeigh speaks, I do see a hand raised by John California, but I don't recognize him as being assigned time by any of either the appellants or the respondents. So John, I'm going to also suggest that if you want to make points, that you either ask one of the appellants or respondents to sponsor you here at the
5 minutes is
or
plenty
that
of
you
time,
submit,
Brody.
A brief of your own after the hearing.
Yes,
so go
JJ,
ahead, Mr.
Discord
McVeigh,
meetings
you
are
wanted
valid.
to, comment more on Mr.
But they
Turney's,
didn't give the notice in a meeting.
question.
Thank you. Yeah, I
it's
just wanna
kind of
respond
complicated what they
briefly to
did.
2 points that Mr. Goward made.
But they
The first of
posted
which
a
he's
notice
talking
on
about all of these
Discord
due
5
process
minutes before
issues
the
that are
meeting.
built into Robert's
But it
Rules
is
of
valid
Order.
to
It
post
specifically
notices on
says
Discord,
that
but
Robert's
5
Rules of
minutes
Order,
isn't
unless
adequate
superseded
notice.
by the bylaws. The bylaws said a vote of, now they say a majority of the state board, that vote took place. That's all that's required. Creating these new requirements is something, again, that they're trying to use to cling on to power and suggest that their removals were illegitimate when they were not.
Will McVeigh
Secondly,
talking about clinging
about
onto
the November
power.
20th meeting.
Isn't that
Yes,
rich?
everything had already happened already, and it's my firm belief that everything that happened was valid. But as I said in the comment that was so helpfully quoted by Dr. Lepore, if we want to play pretend, we can play pretend. So we played pretend on November 20th at the beginning of the meeting.
God, he's
and
such a
pretended
dick.
that all of these people who had since been disqualified from membership were still on the state board and could have participated had they chosen to. They did not choose to because they would have lost. And that speaks directly to your question, Mr. Attorney. So I hope that addresses it. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you, everyone. Again, Dr. Rourke, we should move on to other questions, I think, by now.
Yes, and I see that Bill Hines has his hand up, and again, you are going to be able to respond. You have, not at this moment, but you have lots of time left, and if you use that time, you can always submit a brief later. As I said, we will accept briefs. So I'm going to go on to Chuck Moulton and have him ask whatever questions that he has.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Apparently,
yes,
Chuck
okay.
was a hero in Pennsylvania these
I have
past
a
few
few
days,
questions.
though, regarding the newsletter.
Some questions directed to Mr. McVeigh, and I have some questions directed to all parties. I will first ask the questions to Mr. McVeigh because I think they're fairly simple. So you asked for two things in your request to the JC. Let me find exactly where this is in your, okay, requested rulings. So the second thing you challenge is the claimed election of Otto Dawson as Region 5 alternate to LNC.
Yeah, I got a text message from someone who said what Chuck did.
I have a question for that, which you've answered by email, but I also wanted to bring up in this hearing. What was the date of that LNC alternate election?
I want to say it was around October 11th. I'm forgetting the exact date off the top of my head, but it was about a week or two into October, so it was early October.
And when was your appeal filed?
The appeal was filed on December 9th, I believe.
So was that submitted within 30 days of that action?
No, it was not, and I think that merits an explanation if you don't mind.
Sure.
And this was mentioned briefly by Mr. Molman talking about, whether or not the behavior of one LNC member or decisions made outside of the LNC are within their purview. When the election of Mr. Dossing took place and our vote was disqualified from that regional meeting, I didn't think that by itself, particularly given Ms. Hogarth's attendance record and the fact that her alternate generally has very little to do, that one thing alone was sufficient to claim constructive disaffiliation. And therefore didn't elevate to the level of having subject matter jurisdiction to come before the Judicial Committee, especially because everything else we were still apparently being recognized by the National Party. But when the motion was passed on December 5th, essentially saying that whoever is the legitimate leadership of the LPD, if they don't get enough people to come to their competing convention, then they're no longer the affiliate of the LPD. At that point, I think we crossed into the boundaries of constructive disaffiliation, and the issue with the regional alternate is just one more aspect of that constructive disaffiliation rather than the disaffiliation itself.
Thank you. My second question to you is in Appendix E of your filing, you attached the Articles of Association and Bylaws of the Libertarian Party of Delaware as they stood prior to Mr. Hines' removal as chair.
Right.
I just wanted to clarify, are those the same as the bylaws at the end of your last state convention, or were amendments made between the state convention and the removal of Mr. Hines at which that document was fixed that you sent us?
I would have to review the minutes, but I believe at least one amendment was made regarding the formation of temporary standing committees by the state board. That language was inserted in the section regarding the duties of the state board at the Q3 LPD state board meeting that took place in August. And that amendment was added there with the support, I believe, of the entirety of the elected at June state board, including the secretary who resigned and the 4 members who are no longer on the board.
So the one thing I want to clarify, and I honestly don't know the answer to this, so I'm hoping to clarify this. Your bylaws allow amendment by a majority of the state board. Was that the procedure from the bylaws as of the end of the state convention?
Yes, at the end of the state convention, and this has been part of the governing documents of the LPD since before I got involved back in 2010, is that there used to be 2 sections. We've since merged them together and gotten rid of the distinction. But the top section was the Articles of Association that could be amended by a 2/3 vote, either at the convention or by the state board following 30 days of posted notice being defined elsewhere. And the bylaws, a section at the bottom, could be amended by a majority vote of the convention or the state board following 30 days notice, with the notice requirements defined elsewhere. As I said, we've since collapsed that all into one section, called them bylaws, and required a 2/3 vote. But at the end of the convention in June, that distinct 2-section governing documents with the 2/3 on the top and the majority at the bottom was the procedure that was written into place, and has been the procedure written into place for 11 years at that point, and has been frequently used both by the convention and the state board to make modifications to the governing documents.
Thank you. So now I have some questions for all 3 groups. I'm going to read. So let me give a little background. There was a judicial committee decision in the Libertarian Party of Oregon, which recognized the Wagner faction as the legitimate officers of that party, and that based it in large part on the fact that the Wagner faction was the one with ballot access recognized by the Secretary of State. In later clarifying remarks by Bill Hall on Independent Political Report, in the comment section, he explained the reasoning for putting such weight on the Secretary of State. And I'm going to read an excerpt from that. He said, number 4, for me, some of the most important indicia of who the LP's current affiliate in Oregon, pending future negotiation or litigation among LPO members are: A, which group is recognized by the state as having ballot access? B, which state has possession of the property of the LPO, funds, websites, state mailing list? C, which group, in a more general sense, campaign finance, violence, contracts, etc., is the LPO under state law? So I would like to ask all 3 groups, the LNC, the Hines faction, and the McVeigh faction, how they would answer A, B, and C.
I'm already unmuted, so I can go first if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead. Let me know if you need me to repeat those.
I'm not sure I remember what distinctly was A, B, and C, but
okay.
Kind of cover.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just kind of cover. I get the crux of your question. So the first thing I'll talk about is ballot access, and if I'm being completely honest, the answer is we're not entirely sure, because there's no ballot access to be disputed until somebody actually tries to file a candidate or a nomination, and we're going to be starting that process very shortly here in Delaware. That wasn't possible until the new year, so we've just kind of gotten into that position now. And there have been a couple of candidates who were nominated down in Sussex County. Tomorrow we may have 1 or 2 nominated in Kent County, and then the week after that we may have some nominated in Newcastle County, whereas the statewide candidates won't be nominated until the convention taking place in March 12th, Dover, Delaware, Kent County Theater Guild, by the way. So it's hard to say for sure who the ballot qualified party is, but as one indicator, the Commissioner of Elections is required by Delaware state law under Title 15 to provide a list of registered voters to the major parties once a month automatically, and to quote unquote minor parties once a month free of charge upon request. And if it's not the minor party asking for it, if it's just some random person out on the street who's running a nonprofit or whatever, they have to pay, I think the cost right now is $25, and they get a limited data set based on the fact that they're not a recognized minor party. And we have requested that data set several times since this has taken place in October. And as I said, that's just one indicator. I'm not sure that I would call that
I'm
definitive
sure,
at this point.
Michael, that
And
John
we expect
Waldenberg
there
is
may be
very
some
ass
situations
mad
coming
about
up in
that,
court
but
over
I
the
was
next
happy about it.
couple months relating to ballot access, and I've fought those fights before in state court, and I'm confident in our case. So that's the answer to ballot access. When it comes to assets, websites, and the like, as Mr. Hines mentioned, I had administrative access prior to the changes on October 1st based on existing state board policy and the fact that I created all of those assets in the first place.
Yeah, but now there are
So
competing
the
assets, so
legitimate
that
party as,
is a
you know,
neutral.
modified by the removals on October 1st and then again
That's-
ratified
that-
on November 20th still has control of those assets.
That zeroes
The
out.
one exception is the bank accounts and Facebook page of the Newcastle County affiliate, who is under the control of members of the removed faction. And so we have not been able to recover those at this time. However, we do have new versions of those assets that are officially linked on the state level assets. And there's a, you know, a coherent web of links that point one to the other to make sure that everybody knows where the legitimate sites and Facebook pages are. So that's where that control is. Now, in terms of contracts and, you know, just the state's view overall of who is the continuous organization, again, it's kind of hard to nail that down. The state doesn't go around just voluntarily saying, oh, we recognize you as such. It usually comes as a result of a legal proceeding. And while the Hines faction has been threatening legal action since this occurred on October 1st, they've yet to actually put their money where their mouth is. So we haven't seen anything in that regard. And it's hard to say where a court will come down on that, just, you know, by virtue of judges having their own minds and doing their own thing. But again, based on all of the things we've discussed here previously about whether or not the bylaws were complied with and whether or not the bylaws provided the opportunity for changes to be made by the state board, I think that any court will find it's very clear that the proper processes were followed. At the very least, a good faith attempt was made to follow those processes. And therefore, the continuous organization is the one that continues to maintain control of all of the assets, including the bank accounts, the website, the Facebook pages, the Discord server, all that good stuff. And I am 99% sure the ballot access as well. I don't know if I covered A, B, and C there. I think I did. But
I think you did. One last follow-up is, does Delaware file with the FEC?
We do not file with the FEC. That does bring up another point. We do file a campaign finance report with the Commissioner of Elections, and we are still in control of that access, and we are preparing to file our 2021 annual report here in 3 or 4 or 5 days here.
Thank you. I'd like to hear the Hines faction answer the same question.
Hi, sure. To begin with, one of the struggles we had was that Mr. McVeigh refused to share access to any of our social media accounts and actually claimed those accounts as his own property. He did not recognize them as LPD assets. He recognized them as Will McVeigh assets on loan to the LPD, which gave him total control, and he was the final arbitrator.
That is a great point,
the
Bill.
second thing,
that's one of the best points made. They
about
never were
is
LPDE
these,
assets.
financial
Great
assets.
point. Oh my God, that was a great
His
point.
mom, Mary Pat McVeigh, is the treasurer for LPD, elected at our convention, and she's gone with the cohorts to Splinter Group, and we have not gone to court yet.
Man, I wish I made that point.
To limit the impact
I'm impressed.
of spending to our membership. A third thing that wasn't talked about here with Mr. McVeigh is that he disaffiliated the entire
I want to talk so bad,
base
but it
of
won't help them, I don't
libertarians
think.
in the state of Delaware.
If they ask for
and
public
brought
comment,
the size of the party
I don't think they will.
From
but if they do,
approximately 60
I might.
active members to 20, which is him, his family, and his cohorts. So we see that
and
Mr.
bringing up
McVeigh
that it's the
has
McVeigh
ceased to
family,
operate
his
the
mother.
LPD as a political party and has turned it
That's
into
a good
social
point
club.
too. It's risky, but a good point.
Talking about the Commissioner of Elections, the Newcastle County affiliate is independent of Mr. McVeigh's LPD and ours. And so they operate independently. And the way Delaware election law works, real simply put, is the treasurer is in control of the party. Will had the treasurer change the chairman of our party from myself to him on October 4th, the Monday following the Friday night that all this happened. And so the election commissioner
Cherry Pie, I
doesn't
don't
really
know.
question what
There's
the
only
treasurer
one
does
point
as
I
far
want
as
to make,
changing
and I'm
membership
waiting to
of party
see
members.
if someone else makes
Because
the
in
point.
Delaware, the
If they
treasurer is the
do,
ultimate
there's no purpose.
responsible party for the party itself through the
And it's a
election
very,
finance
very short,
platform.
non-contentious point. And the reason I want to speak about it is not just for Delaware,
last thing
it's
I
for
want to say
Colorado.
is there has been no good faith on the part.
Because
Mr.
Colorado's
McVeigh
worried
mentioned
this could happen to them.
They've done all this in good faith. There was absolutely no good faith done here.
Bill is now
he
doing well.
himself
Maybe he
has
just needed to
admitted,
warm up.
one, it's the lesser of two evils that he did this for, because he feels like one or two people should not be in the party, and myself and Dr. Lepore would have stood between him and disaffiliating those people from the party because they're not as bad as he claims they are. And then the other thing is, I'm sorry, trying to stay in. Let me see. The other thing I wanted to mention about the good faith is, oh yeah. So Mr. McVeigh was interviewed on a podcast about how this whole thing was organized. And he was asked a question point blank. Did you turn off commenting on the post that led to all of this? The post that would ultimately remove board members, change our bylaws. And he said no. And then the podcast personality, Dan Smoltz, actually had a screenshot of Will, in fact, turning off commenting on the post to ensure that it fell to the bottom of the feed in the LP group where it was posted. So the fact that he lied and was called out in his lie and captured in his lie makes me question his sincerity and his honesty in everything he does based on that.
Mr. Hines, you're getting a little far afield of my question about which group is recognized as having ballot access, which group has the assets, campaign finance, etc. Do you have any further comments on that question?
Yeah, so the final answer is, as Mr. McVeigh said, we will probably end up in a court of law because there's dissension among who it should be.
Okay.
I put myself on mute while I'm eating candy, by the way.
That bylaw amendment, I asked Mr. McVeigh about the procedure for amending the bylaws, and he said that the fact that it was just a majority of the state board with 30 days notice has been the amendment procedure for a long time. Is that the case, that a majority can amend the bylaws?
So yeah, so that is what the bylaw was stated as. But what he doesn't say is that there was a tradition of folks, well, number one, the state sponsored bylaw changes were only meant to be nuanced changes like, maybe grammatical corrections, that type of thing. They were never intended to be sweeping change. And he can argue that all he wants. I would bring in Sean Gower to support that, the former chair who has overseen a lot of these bylaw changes prior to the 2021 convention.
So
that's not, I believe him, but that's not a good
bylaws
argument.
Article 5 says these bylaws may be amended in either of two ways. A simple majority vote of members present at a meeting of the state board, as long as notice of proposed changes made at least 30 days in advance, or a simple majority vote of members present at the state convention, as long as proposed changes were made.
They need to really challenge the notice thing
with
the bylaws. They're not doing that.
B, the state convention is where all major changes were made, and A, meetings was only minor grammatical changes?
That was the intent, and Mr. Goward can support that statement.
Intent doesn't matter
Yes.
unless the bylaw
okay,
is ambiguous, per Roberts.
There's nothing in the bylaws that says that, so that I guess it's just tradition apparently.
Yes.
But
Mr. Moulton,
yeah.
I'm terribly sorry to interrupt, but where the articles of association and bylaws are silent, where it goes to state conventions and state board meetings, we specifically refer to Robert's Rules of Order. And if you reference section 49.7, it says specifically, in any event, no action of the board can alter or conflict with any decision made by the assembly of the society, and any such action
I'm
of
sorry,
the board
he's wrong
is
there.
null and void. And that being said, our view on previous boards going back at least,
if they didn't pass a resolution or put that limitation in the bylaws, it's not contradicting the convention.
Instructions to the board were that the board
show me the resolution.
Would make changes.
I know, JJ, I agree with you. This is a bad argument
of making the articles of association and the bylaws easier to understand, making minor modifications, and any recommendations made by the board would be submitted to convention.
I wish this were true.
For ratification. And
equity, I believe it should be true, but it's not true according to Roberts.
In procedure, in perception of Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure, I take those solely on myself and my own limited understanding of parliamentary procedure, because at the time...
Thank you. Thank you. I understand what you're saying.
Sure.
So, Mr. Hines, if it is the case that that the board can make substantive amendments by a majority vote, which you say is in dispute, but if a majority can just make any change they want to the bylaw with the 30 days notice, would anything prevent Mr. McVeigh from making whatever changes he wants with 30 days notice without any notice defects? I mean, if he shouts this from the rooftop and everyone agrees ample notice is made, why couldn't he do the same thing over and over again, as he stated?
So my argument is very simple. The fact that that you don't really get do-overs in life because you did something wrong the first time. And that's what he was going for. He was going for a do-over of an inept process that he should never have followed. And we were not going to be a party to it.
Okay, thank you. And now I'd like to talk to the LNC. If Chair Bilyeu or Ken Moulman, Vice Chair Moulman, wants to address my three previous questions about which group is recognized as having ballot access, which group has control of party funds, websites, state mailing list, and which group files campaign finance filings, contracts, etc. under Delaware state law. Does the LNC have any comment on that?
We do, and we did supply that briefly in our response. Essentially, this hasn't been litigated yet. Unlike the Oregon ruling, I believe they had been to court. They had a court battle, as I recall, that went across a decade, multiple lawsuits, multiple
No, they hadn't, Ken.
And
that happened
when it comes
after
to something that was touched on before about ballot access and the threats of litigation, speaks to that there has been no litigation as of yet. I think both leadership slates came to the LNC.
I am so angry with Ken right now.
Deem that they were the legitimate organization. and in failing to do so have filed this appeal. It may be
I am
that
rethinking whether he's a good
the LNC
JC
decides,
candidate.
regardless of what the Judicial Committee
I have to be honest
decides, just like in the Oregon case, there will be litigation. And I don't really know. I mean, I'm a person, and I think the LNC, I think I can speak for the LNC.
And I'll probably tomorrow take that back because I adore
We
Ken
don't want to see that happen.
so much.
We don't want litigation to occur.
Adore him so much.
Which is why we passed a motion encouraging
but he is so bad here.
a meeting of the membership. We did provide a provision for competing conventions because, as you can see, these two groups are not very friendly towards each other and do not seem to want to work together. I would only state that it would be to the benefit of the members of Delaware.
I would jump off of a building
if they could,
and slit my throat on the way down before I would ever defend this LNC for anything.
In specifically addressing Mr. Hall's considerations, I don't know that those were written up in the official finding. In the research that was done.
It wasn't. It was a concurring opinion.
We saw that the ballot access issue was touched upon, which is why we did touch on that in our response, that we do not see any litigation that has occurred yet. And this is a very early
Let me tell you where Ken fucked up, and I know this.
All of this. So
from my text
I don't
with
know.
him. He's only arguing the December
It's irony in a way.
motion.
That
the Bill Hines appeal is not about the December motion. It's about the November 21st motion.
Practical terms,
when I brought that up to Ken, I could tell
so
he was like, oops,
I can't really say definitively what the LNC would do.
These two hearings should not have been combined. The JC fucked that up.
I cannot say what the next LNC would do, who would actually be empowered to do something, because we are stuck in non-disaffiliation land through the convention. But I think that's basically the answer, is that this hasn't been litigated. So unlike Oregon, it is a different situation.
Okay, just very, very briefly, I would say that that's actually inaccurate. That that the Oregon lawsuit happened after the Judicial Committee appeal.
You are
so
Ken. You're talking out your ass.
It's
not the way it happened.
Dr. Moulton, I apologize if that's the case. It was my understanding that the first lawsuit flew just a few months after the close of the 2006 National Convention.
That is an old one.
My fault
that
for
had been
that misunderstanding, but that was
a different group.
With Adam Mayer, who is now passed.
That's a different
different
Oregon issue.
That he had been personally served 2 or 3 months after the close of the 2006 National Convention.
There were 2 Oregon controversies.
So let me clarify. You may be right as the date that the papers were filed, but these lawsuits take a long time.
Yes.
And there were
many
2.
years, and there was nothing near a decision at the time that the JC ruled on this. Different
lawsuit.
I guess my concern is
Chuck.
If
I don't know if Chuck
LP
knows this.
has to wait for litigation to finish, then that could leave things potentially in limbo for years. Anyway, thank you.
I agree, Dr. Moulton. I think I can say we agree with that.
And
that it could take years.
The we
which
he
is
keeps
why we
saying
suggested
of the LNC.
trying to do something else cooperatively.
You lay down with dogs, Ken, you're going to get up with fleas.
Anyway, I think I'm taking up too much time, so thank you very much, and that's the end of my questions.
Okay, thank you.
Ken, I hope you watch this.
I want to say
I am so
noticed
fucking
that Carter Hill has
disappointed.
his hand raised, and I just want to remind everyone that we're only hearing from the principals in this particular hearing.
Okay.
If you have a point that you want to make, we are accepting briefs up to 7 days after we are done with the hearing, which actually might not be till next week, Sunday, given how we're moving, we'll see. So that would be the place to have a brief, unless you can get one of the principals to give you some of their time. And the best time to do that would probably be in the extra time that the principals still have for rebuttal, So if you want to check in with them while we're continuing this process, that would be fine. And I think the next JC member that is open for questions is Vermin Supreme. So Vermin, if you want to unmute yourself and ask questions, go ahead. I should say ask a question, unless of course it's short. Chuck had a bunch of short questions, so we let him continue for a while.
Yes, thank you very much. It's nice to be here again. Of course, as Laurel once said to Hardy over and over again, this is another fine mess you have gotten us into. And unfortunately, I mean, it seems as if though the facts are there, and almost all of my curiosities are around the drama and the intent and the justifications, and they are completely irrelevant and unnecessary for this particular procedure.
An irrelevant and unnecessary person.
I have no questions for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, and I don't think that D. Frank Robinson is here, or Tom Arnold, but if they are, now is the time to unmute your microphone and give us your questions. And if not, Alicia, I think you're up again, so go ahead and continue your questioning.
Okay, I do have a couple of other meaty topics. Let's do this one first. Let's talk about notice.
Thank you, Alicia.
The notice for the October situation. So I guess I would start with Mr. McVeigh and let the other parties weigh in as well. I want to know what he believes is inherent in a requirement that notice be provided. Is it inherent that it is something that can be reasonably noticed?
I hope Dr. Lepore knows
that's
that this is her opportunity.
The implication, even
this is the opportunity.
Concept,
this is the way. Right now,
notice is for people to notice and be informed.
I hope they let Amy speak.
I'll probably have a follow-up, but let's start with that. Is it inherent in the concept of notice that it be something capable of being noticed? And I use that word in, an official definition way and a layperson way.
All right. If you don't mind, I just want to touch on a couple of things real quick from the previous question that I didn't get a chance to respond to. The main one being Mr. Molman's assertion that both sides asked for.
Can you save that for the remaining time?
Thank you, Alicia.
Go ahead and address my question this time, please.
No problem.
Thank you, Alicia.
So
you're
notice,
good in everything except for my
what you're
case, where you are just a scorned woman.
But I think the relevant definition is the ones that are contained in the bylaws of the Libertarian Party of Delaware, which was submitted as part of my appeal. The version before October 1st and the version
Amy Lepore is the rock star of this hearing.
If you look under Article 10, I don't think that article number has been changed. Many actions described in these bylaws require notice of that pending action to be provided to members. Any one of the following methods shall constitute proper notice: posting on the LPD Facebook page, posting to the LPD Facebook group, posting on the LPD webpage. So posting to the LPD Facebook group shall constitute proper notice, whether or not people see it, whether or not comments are turned on and off, whether it's by an administrator or by the person who originally posted it, who saw it, whether it was discussed ahead of time. None of that is relevant. None of that has anything to do with the bylaws definition.
Will, I have a message for you.
Shall constitute proper notice, and bylaws are greater than drama.
Oh my God, he quoted Vermin Supreme. He quoted Vermin Supreme.
Understanding of that may be different, and I understand the procedural complaints that have been raised by Mr. Hines and his allies, and that is among the reasons why we went ahead and had that play pretend do-over on November 20th, where we did provide all kinds of proper notice as to the date and time and methods of participation in the meeting and the notice of the proposed bylaws change. So that notice absolutely, under any possible definition, happened from November 20th.
But it was a notice issued by a fraudulent board, you fucking barking moonbat.
then in this particular instance matters.
So if the notice had been posted in a graphic, which was white text on a white background, so it just looked
If
like
it was
a
in
blank
Dothraki,
white blob on the screen, it was technically posted, but you know nobody can see it.
I love her
You took
here.
action to
I
make
hated
sure
her
that
in my
nobody could see
opinion.
it. Would that
Because again,
constitute proper
she was
notice?
just a
Or,
scorned
you know,
woman.
even if
But
we
Alicia
weren't dealing
is
with the
smart.
LPD bylaws, which say post on Facebook counts under,
I'm sorry, I got a red tongue from
in
the.
Roberts, giving verbal notice at a prior meeting. Well, it doesn't say anyone has to hear you. So
Right, you can mumble
if
it.
somebody sits in the meeting and they whisper to themselves the notice of what they want to bring up at the next meeting, but nobody else can hear it, and they know nobody else can hear it, did they give notice?
Well, I would argue with regards to your example about verbal notice and you whisper it so no one can hear you. If the secretary doesn't hear you and it doesn't go into the minutes, then it doesn't count. That's what I would say in that particular regard. I mean, just talking about a pure hypothetical here. As for the white text on a white background, since it's required to be a post in a Facebook group, I'm not entirely sure if the forum supports that as a possible means of doing the post.
You could do.
Let's assume it does.
It does. You can in a graphic.
Okay, well,
you could
then
create
if
a
we're assuming
graphic.
that it does, and it says post in a Facebook group, then yes, unfortunately, it's a weakness in the process. I will certainly grant you that posting it in the Facebook group such that it's invisible does technically constitute proper notice.
You're
It
an
says
idiot.
Shall constitute proper
You're
notice.
an
It doesn't
idiot.
provide example format. It doesn't provide font spacing or coloring or size requirements. It says a post in the Facebook group shall constitute proper notice. And that is among the things that we, first of all, addressed in regards to the November 20th meeting, November 20th meeting. And second of all, addressed by actually amending the amendment process for changing the bylaws to say that it now has to go through an established temporary committee, or at this point, no, it's actually a permanent committee that's established in the bylaws to evaluate proposed bylaws changes and to make sure that they are posted prominently where everybody
Alicia
has
is
the
correct.
opportunity with any
God, I
minor
wish she
amount
wasn't
of
such
due
a bitch in my
diligence to make sure
decision.
that they've seen them. So again, I acknowledge that that's a
Wait, you just said to make sure they've
process.
seen them, but one can't see white on white, right? Which you just said was proper.
That's why,
notice.
like I said, that's why we changed it. We changed it to make sure that a reasonable person with any limited amount of attempt and effort.
So you think it's important that it be seen?
That's why we changed the requirement. Yes.
Uh-huh.
That was not the requirement previously.
Oh God, I don't want to like Alicia because I'm very mad at her.
What is the text of the new wording?
But
I
she's
could go
right
look
here.
real quick. I do have it, but
The
you have it
new
handy?
wording currently, as it was adopted at the November 20th meeting, is
I mean, I'll never ever be her friend again.
Which is currently under Article
because
12, other rules and procedures, what was previously
she used the
bylaws,
Judicial Committee to
under
get
Section
even with
4
me for beating
disciplinary
her.
Action, specifically.
But my respect for her
from office in one of two
and
ways.
her
Now it
intelligence
says by a majority vote of all
will
current
never
state
be
board members on a
undermined.
motion to remove.
She is
Previously, it said
smart.
by a vote of 4/5 of state board members, something like that.
I just will never be her friend again.
That's what the language currently says.
Okay, I think I must have misunderstood something you said previously because I thought you were talking about altering how notice is given.
Oh, what does it say currently for that part? Okay, I'm sorry, I
Mhm.
did your question. So now currently under the new Article 11 amendment, the state board shall appoint or remove members of a bylaws committee by majority vote. Members of the bylaws committee shall review all amendment proposals submitted by any member and release a report containing
Yeah, Libertarian Revolution, that's
amendment,
it.
any revised version which may receive a majority vote of committee members, any recommendation regarding the proposal written by committee members, your minority report, so to speak. Any 5 members of the LPD may petition the bylaws committee between 90 and 60 days prior to an annual convention to review a proposed amendment, in which case a report should be released no less than 30 days prior to the convention, to make sure that amendments from the floor can be considered and can get.
I think this is also not what I was thinking of. I tell you what, I'll just check the bylaws that you sent us myself to find what I thought you
Yeah,
were
I'm
discussing.
sorry if I didn't understand your question.
That's because
properly.
you're an idiot,
I'll look
Will.
it up.
We
but-
changed it to
Will,
make sure
not
that
Bill.
somebody
Derp.
posting something in a Facebook group, white on white or minuscule text or in Swahili or whatever.
Dothraki!
Well, that's what I was curious about. What language did you write into the rules to say now that it it cannot be white on white, that it must be seen because you think
or not in
that's
Dothraki.
important, or
that it has to be considered and reported by the bylaws committee, and we can establish policy for how the bylaws committee has to, you know, make their
Oh,
notices
so
to
you
ensure that
haven't
they
done it
conform.
yet.
and if the and if all of their reports are white on white text, I mean, at what point does this ridiculous facade fall apart?
I'm gonna clip that out,
That
the way
white on
she
white
laughed
is-
at
We're
him.
talking about a hypothetical question here. I mean, I don't.
No, we're not talking hypothetical.
She's
given
kicking
that,
his ass so hard.
Specific action was taken to make sure that people did not see the notice, which completely undermines the purpose of
I mean,
notice.
there's a distinction between white on white, which someone cannot see, and it got buried, which someone may not see, but there's nothing saying they can't see it. This is not a question of can't see. This is a question of, if you don't spend any time looking through the Facebook group posts, you probably won't see it, but there's nothing preventing you from seeing it. And again, the point here is that the bylaws committee that we established, and the requirement that they do reports and that they publish those reports to multiple locations, is to
rebut anything that was said here. My question is more precisely about what Mr. McVeigh's side had done actively.
Yeah, there's several hands raised. Amy, Bill, and Sean have all raised their hands. So you can pick from among them the order in which you want to hear from them.
Let's go with Bill Hines.
Thank you. I'm going to yield to Amy on this question, but I did want to mention that Carter Hill is part of our team, so if he raises his hand, he should be acknowledged as part of our team. Thank you for that, and I'll yield this question to Amy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I think I understand the question, Alicia, and I'm going to attempt to answer it as thoroughly as I can in response to, to what Mr. McVeigh has shared. So our position is that notification in October was defective and in violation of Robert's Rules of Order. And that's important because notification is not necessarily addressed fully in the bylaws. So the lack of notice did not comply with 913, the call for special meetings. And again, special meetings are not authorized in the bylaws. They would have had been called or authorized by the assembly. If we take a look at Robert's 914, and the board did not authorize a call for a special meeting, nor did the chair direct the secretary to send notice of a special meeting. So there is no condition under which we could have had an October 1st meeting, and I'll address that in two separate ways. So first, as Alicia has alluded to, Will McVeigh and his team purposefully hid a bylaw change, and the language of that bylaw change, I'll read it to you, said, change bylaw for ? There was no, the word notice was not used. The word notification was not used. It was not tagged accordingly, as is in past practice in the LPD Facebook group. So there is no way that we could, that it ever could be argued that proper notification was given. And in lieu of reading to you the kind of full argument about the violations of notification, violations of member rights, I will point you to Exhibit A of our appeal filing. And page 1 of that document, not page 1 of the PDF, but page 1 of that document, comes after the table of contents, is a full summary of those violations. They span violations, again, of Robert's, violations of our bylaws, violations of member rights, and of the most basic of parliamentary law. And some examples, again, so LPD articles, let's see, 4 and 10 addressed how to convene a meeting and how to provide notice for a bylaw or article amendment, respectively. And there was no guiding language about meeting notification. So we had to rely on Robert's special meetings on 913. We were unable, there is not evidence that the meeting was called properly, in addition to the fact that these people purposefully hid the notice and laughed about it. So again, we would also maintain that the underlying principles of parliamentary law were violated. So both Roberts and the adopted bylaws are intended to protect the membership. And I feel like talking about our membership, talking about what the delegates, the board of delegates elected, and what their will is, has gone completely and totally by the wayside. It is almost not evident in our conversation tonight. And again, basic parliamentary law, Robert's Rules of Order, our bylaws are intended to protect those members' rights. And we are members. Mr. Casey, Mr. Hines, myself are members, and we were not permitted to participate fully in a meeting. That meeting was not notified. We were never offered the opportunity of a proxy, and they were able to kind of perform these illicit acts, again, under the cover of secrecy, and that was intentional. There may be some additional points that I'll want to address, but I would absolutely point you toward Exhibit A, page 1, Section 1, summary of violations. This fully informs our approach.
I'm having
and why
hope
we believe again
that the JC will rule right, but I had hoped that the JC would rule right in my
and then I want to bring
too.
up one more thing because it is relevant here.
This is just bringing
there are
back
3
bad
counties
memories.
in Delaware, if you didn't already know that. 2 of those 3 counties have already passed resolutions to condemn the behavior of these 5 people. And those resolutions stated that they did not recognize anything that happened after September 30th. And that's important for you to know. There are also multiple petitions signed by dues-paying members of the National Party and signed by libertarians in Delaware, a majority of convention attendees. All state that these things were insufficient, that notice was not given, that their will is not being done. And we can make sure we provide some of those additional documents to the Judicial Committee after tonight's meeting. Thank you for the chance to speak on this.
All right, thank you. I don't know if the LNC even finds it something they need to comment on, but I want to make sure they have the chance if they wish to.
And Alicia, just so you know, Sean's hand is up, and so is Will McVeigh's. So if
Will already had his
I will
chance
leave
to
it up
speak.
To you to decide if you want to hear from them as well.
All right, so Bill wanted Amy to speak. If Bill requests for Sean to speak, I'm trying to keep the leaders of the group in charge of who speaks for them. So Bill, if you wish to have Sean speak, please let me know. In the meantime,
yes, Sean can speak, definitely.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Goward.
All right. First off, I haven't had a chance to say that I'm not explicitly speaking on behalf of Dr. Lepore and Mr. Hines, nor am I speaking against Mr. McVeigh, but my interest lies within the members of the Libertarian
Narcissistic. It's always been divided like all political parties, but this is new. This kind of bullshit is new.
Specifically, notification. I would like to point out specifically that between July 7th and September 29th, 2021, there were 4 proposed changes to the Articles of Association made online with notice made in accordance with the Articles of Association and bylaws, 2 of which were done by Mr. William McVeigh, and all 4 of those changes to the Articles of Association
That's a very good point by Sean.
Were tagged with the hashtag that the # thing. You'll have to forgive me. I'm ancient and don't know the whole hashtag.
That's okay.
Thing. But it's # AOA amendment notifications. And my understanding of Facebook is that if you search Facebook for AOA amendment notifications, that that anything that has that hashtag, that has that # will be included in that conversation. However, the one to change bylaw 4 to reduce the number of individuals on the state board required to change or required to remove individuals from the state board did not have any such hashtag or hyperlink or anything like that associated with that. And that was made on August 31st. So those 4 previously cited articles of association changes were referenced by hashtag. However, the one that that created the fallout with all of the other changes to the articles of association, to the composition of the board, to the membership of the Libertarian Party of Delaware, none of that was done. And I would also like to point out that if you go to defense.lpdelaware.org, any individual on the Judicial Committee can see that there is an obvious intent to bury this alleged notification under what
Death, you are always cold.
Dump. And because
I believe, I don't know if you've seen the documents, but they actually provided us with a link to that, so that material is available for us to review.
Okay, so because that notification, or because that documentary evidence is available, and because because comments were turned off, members of the state board were not able to be tagged in the notification of the proposed bylaw change. And if you take a look at defense.lpdelaware.org, you see that this is an absolutely intentional intentional plot to obstruct what they're trying to do. You will see that notification was intentionally obstructed from members who could have raised points of order, and specifically, if
Justin, you missed Ken being a disappointment, and Alicia kicking ass.
Points of order, and he could have used parliamentary procedure.
Alicia laughed at Will McVeigh, which is technically indecorous, by the way. Alicia broke decorum.
In order to prevent
Miss Matson,
to prevent the subjugation of the Libertarian Party of Delaware. And like I said, I don't give a crap about Mises Caucus. I don't give a crap about.
Let's keep
Amy LaPure and Alicia Matson are the stars of this. Sean isn't helping. I like Sean, but he's going on way too long.
What I am saying is that for the members of for all 2,165 members of the Libertarian Party of Delaware, their membership hinges on the decisions made on 1 October 2016.
I understand what you're saying,
Sean,
but I think we're stepping far afield of
Sean, you're hurting. You're hurting.
So let's move on to Mr. McVeigh. And again, Mr. Goward, I hear the points that you're saying. We're aware of those things. And I don't want you to think that because I'm moving on that we're dismissing those facts. Those are available to us. Thank you very much. Mr. McVeigh.
Okay, there feels like there's a whole lot to respond to here, so I'm going to try to cover what I remember to cover. The main thing that needs to be kept in mind here.
Am I missing it, or Susan Hogarth not
of the
here?
Judicial Committee or the LNC.
There she is, second page.
Body,
okay, that would have surprised me. Okay, I found her.
National Party to decide who is the leadership of the Libertarian Party of Delaware.
Narcissistic, 2 that are public.
Please keep it focused on
1 more that is private that I can't talk about
yet. And we're
yet.
getting into the weeds here about, was notice proper? Did it meet this requirement or that requirement? And did it do all of these things?
Now I like
that,
Will
I keep in mind
to keep talking and just be an ass.
So now to that point, all these things about hashtags and the word notification and question marks and posts made by me that were notifications and the post in question that was made by somebody else.
Nobody mentioned that the person who posted the notice wasn't allowed to post the notice.
Hashtags, the, you know, blasting the word notification, whether or not comments can be turned on.
The two that are known are
Posts can still be
Massachusetts
shared,
and
by the way,
Vermont.
and that pushes it right back up to the top. You can tag anybody you want. You can keep the comments turned on, all that stuff.
The
So fact
LNC
that
meeting
comments
to
were
try to
turned off
spank
here,
Joshua
completely
is
irrelevant.
tomorrow.
The fact
And
that
the
it
LNC
didn't say
meeting on
notification,
Massachusetts is
completely
next
irrelevant.
Sunday.
The fact that it was buried. Okay, I get how that's a legitimate complaint, but again, based on the requirements of the Libertarian Party Delaware's bylaws, a post in the Facebook group, it met the requirement. Whether it was buried is irrelevant and doesn't change its character from being a notification. The other thing that was brought up was about notice for special meetings. In fact, it does spell out very clearly, we call them ad hoc meetings in our bylaws, that an ad hoc meeting can be convened by a motion second completion of a quorum call. It doesn't require a notice. It specifically says that.
No, it doesn't say it doesn't require a notice. It does not say that. It does not say that.
Properly noticed on October 1st.
It says what he said about a quorum call. It does not say that notice is not required.
All of this is beside the point, again, because any of these complaints, if they had any validity to start with, which I don't believe that they do, and neither does the majority of the state.
Oh, Michael, I did not realize
on
that.
November 20th.
Challenge them at convention.
And, you know, talking about whether or not
if Wyoming
participated in
did that, challenge them at convention.
Proposed amendment out of order. Okay, you can try that. It's a violation.
How many delegates are we talking? 3?
And then we could overturn that.
It doesn't matter. If it was even 1, I would say challenge them.
The majority of the elected board in June says that all of this was copacetic.
Justin, this is the most appealed LNC in history, and there were actually
unimplemented. And
there's 3 appeals. There's 2 separate appeals being heard here, Justin. There's 3 appeals. And if you count Philly's one that was rejected by the LC, by the JC,
Alicia,
there's been 4 appeals
this
term.
Carter Hill has also
but this isn't one
raised his
appeal,
hand.
Justin. This is 2 separate
I see
appeals
that
being heard
Amy
at once.
Sean's are still up, but I suspect that might just be okay.
So
Amy
they've
just
had
put her
4.
hand down, so I don't know that she has anything further to say.
And they're about to get another one, I think.
And I'm assuming that Mr. McVeigh was done, but if I'm wrong, you know, he should feel free to continue if Alicia is wanting him to. I just wanted to make sure Alicia knew that Carter had his hand up.
No, I'm good. I was finished. Thank you.
Okay. I thought so, but I don't want to cut anyone off.
I appreciate it.
So Alicia, do you want to hear from Carter or not? You're muted, Alicia.
Sorry,
Whatever happens with the Massachusetts one may need to be appealed.
I'm
we'll need
depending on Mr.
signatures.
Hines and McVeigh to tell me who they wish to speak for their side. So unless I hear a request for Mr. Hill, we'll go on.
Yeah, well, actually, I believe Mr. Hines did say that Carter Hill was part of his group.
Oh, okay.
I did. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Hill? And,
Hi,
and try to
good
keep
evening.
it
Thank
narrowly
you.
focused on my question about was notice proper?
Yes, ma'am. So Mr. McVeigh would have everybody believe that in the normal course of our judicial business in the United States, that a requirement from a court to mail proper notice would include the mailman dropping the letter in a hole instead of in the mailbox. There's no way notice can be construed to be proper if the members needing to see the notice never see it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we can move along to another question or.
Yes, well, we are after 5 o'clock, and I am thinking that maybe we should adjourn to next Sunday.
No. There's a Massachusetts hearing on Sunday.
Alicia, I haven't gotten any input from you
no.
on that. How do you feel about that? Chuck and Jim Turney have already indicated.
I can continue next Sunday.
No.
I believe there is an LNC meeting at 4:30.
Is that Eastern time?
4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern, I believe. Is that correct? Maybe Mr. Molman or Miss Bill, you can verify that we should avoid, obviously.
Yes, we should. What is the time of the LNC meeting? Ken or Whitney, can you confirm?
I believe it is 7:30 Eastern.
7:30 Eastern. Okay. So if we make this 3 p.m. Central, we're going to be making it at 4 p.m. Eastern. So hopefully we won't be any longer than a couple hours next go around. I know I still have questions that haven't been addressed, but might be when we go for another go around.
I do as well.
Yes, I kind of figured that, Alicia. And I think maybe Chuck has some more as well. I don't know if Jim has. What I would say, we've got, okay, so it's 5:11 Central Time. I'm happy to go one more round with one set of questions and then adjourn until, just because I'm thinking in terms of the time left for the three parties, that could actually take up most of our time next week if everybody wants to utilize their time. So I'd like to go just another, 15, 20 minutes before we adjourn, if that's good for everyone. So
I believe in the round robin, you started with me. So since I just had a question, if we had, one question each from Mr. Moulton and Mr. Turney, then at least we'd have a even division of today's time.
Yeah, and Vermin too, if he has one.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So maybe the three JC members that I just mentioned could take a short question if they can, and then we can adjourn until next week. And that way also it gives everybody who's on this call, if they have strong feelings and want to send us an amicus brief, can do so. What we're going to do is what we did last time. We're going to accept briefs from either the appellants, the respondent, or interested LP members for 7 days after we have our final hearing, which of course is going to give you 2 weeks to put something together. But if you have it before then, that's fine too. In fact, that helps us out to spread it out. So Jim Turney, I'm going to ask you if you'd like to ask a question that you think might be brief in ansers. And before you do that, Jim, may I interrupt you? May I interrupt you just for a minute?
Sure.
The reason I'm interrupting you is Whitney's got her hand up, and I want to hear what she has to say in case she objects to the timeline I've just laid out.
Yes, let's hear from Whitney.
Thank you, Dr. Rohr. My biggest concern right now, both of these meetings are essentially have been and are being scheduled without any consideration for, and I don't know how much consideration was given to Mr. McVeigh or Mr. Hines or either of their teams for scheduling either. But I would like to point out that a great deal of what is being discussed today
Requeties from Twitch. I'll answer that when this.
And
they're almost done here.
That the two sides have established, and what we are here for today, the LNC specifically, to answer to the appeal, which is an appeal against a decision we made, and
two decisions.
And that is not a lot of what's being focused on here today, which is extremely frustrating from
from the
LNC's perspective.
God, I can't stand her.
So if there's any way to refocus, particularly if we're going to do this again next week.
What a bitch!
And have this appeal.
Look at the way she's lecturing everybody.
The appeal.
Are you going to spank everyone too, Whitney?
Against the LNC's actions, not their claims against each other.
Well, and I appreciate your comments because, unfortunately, when we have these types of disputes, we do kind of get into some things that aren't necessarily part of this. There is another way we could proceed. I would have to ask my JC colleagues if they would like to proceed in a different way, and let me explain what I think that different way might be, which hopefully will address the LNC's concerns, which I agree. It's very hard because it's hard to get everyone together too. So here's what I'm going to suggest. What we could do is each of the JC members could write out their questions and send them to all of the participants, the respondent and the appellant, and we could ask for written responses. The downside of that is that, of course, until the JC posts these questions and responses,
she is awful. Does she even hear herself?
Would not have an opportunity to actually witness what's going on.
I'm trying to find that picture,
we do have a Google
but I don't
Drive
have it on this
file
computer.
Where we're trying to keep everything, and of course we could post that to whatever list is appropriate, and you know, that would allow everyone to read things as they come in and get posted. Usually the posting happens fairly quickly, and of course I would try very hard to.
I'm confident that JC will rule in the correct way in this way, which I'll be happy for Delaware.
So let me ask my JC colleagues.
But I'm kind of still asthmatic about my
and
thing.
If they are, I will ask the respondents and the appellants if that works for them as well. So Alicia, Jim, Chuck, Bierman, can you tell me, or is that? What do you think of that? Is that something you think would work or not?
No.
That is acceptable to me.
Yeah, I'm fine with that
I'm not,
too.
but it's not my decision.
I do not have an additional question for this session. I think doing things in writing has some advantages. Yes.
I can do that. I can also meet next week. My preference is just to keep this meeting going until we're done.
I agree with Chuck.
But I understand if other people have some other obligations. I'd rather just get stuff out of the way. But I'm flexible, whatever the committee wants to do.
Okay. Alicia, how do you feel?
I'm okay with written questions and time to respond to them, so that coming back next week, hopefully we'll have less to wrap up. You know, that would give us a chance for follow-up questions on the written responses, but it would save us some time, I suppose. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask the appellants and the respondent, how do they feel about that? I think what Alicia is suggesting, that even if we get the written, if we send you the written questions and we get your written responses, we might still have further questions, which we could do at a meeting. Or Alicia, are you comfortable with even doing that by written writing, or do you feel like another meeting's needed?
You need another meeting.
Or do you all feel like we could continue? I guess too. We could. I mean, that's another option. I was just trying to not burn everybody out.
Sure. I don't know until it happens, right? But I imagine there very well could be questions for clarification on the answers that we get in writing that are needed. So, you know, perhaps a short meeting next time just to give opportunity, and if we don't need it, then we can adjourn quickly.
Okay, let me ask the appellants and the respondent how they feel about trying to get it done mostly in writing and then hopefully having a quick meeting next week.
This is Bill Hines. We're fine. I'm fine with that solution.
Mr. McVeigh?
I'm flexible. I'm at the Judicial Committee's disposal. If you want to keep meeting now,
please dispose of him.
You can answer in writing. I can do that. When we come back next week, I can
please
do that.
Dispose of him.
I will say that I very much appreciate Ms. Beaulieu's reminder that this is a focused Judicial Committee hearing on a particular subject, and I agree that we're getting off into the weeds a little bit here.
Okay. Whitney, did you or any of your group want to respond?
I need that picture.
I don't have anything further.
You didn't have anything to
Mr.
begin
Mulman.
with. How does it feel to be Whitney's lapdog, Mr. Mulman?
We are, I'm with Ms. Beaulieu. It's whatever you need. Let us know.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm thinking we will. I mean, I can see, having experienced this now, I'm seeing that we are getting a little off track at times. I guess I could interrupt that, but I'd rather keep it focused, and I think maybe in writing would be the way to keep it focused. And then we can come back next week and try to have a short meeting. Frankly, with the time that the LNC still has left and the time that the two appellants have left, I mean, that if all that time was taken, that would be approximately an hour. And maybe if we're very fortunate, that would be all that we would need. Or, you know, if there were a few more questions, maybe we'd have that. So it sounds like everyone's comfortable with a written procedure. So here's what I'm going to suggest. The JC members should, as soon as they can, let's say in the next 24 hours, assemble our questions, get them to the respondents and the appellants so that they can go ahead and work on those. And if they could get those to us by, you know, if we get them out, let's see, today's Sunday, so if we get them out to you by Monday, is it comfortable to have a response by Friday by close of business? And I'm asking that question, yeah, just I've got a thumbs up from Mr. McVeigh. That's a good way to do it, if you could. If you're okay with that. I see Sean has a hand up. Whitney's got a, okay, thumbs up. Okay, everybody's got a thumbs up. Sean, did you have a question of me? Or, okay, just had left your hand up. Yeah, it's easy to do. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I know it's always difficult when we have these kind of disputes. So maybe this will help keep us focused and keep us from, you know, making any more rancor than we need. We really, if there's any way to resolve this, of course, we'd like to do it. And it's hard to do if there's been a lot of harsh language exchanged. So, so here's the plan. Just again, I'm going to ask the JC to get their questions together within the next 24 hours so we can send to the appellants and the respondent. We're going to ask them, obviously, as soon as possible to get the answers to us, but at least before the close of business on Friday. That will give the JC a day and a half to look them over. And then if there are more questions, we're going to be reconvening at 3 p.m. Central Time next Sunday. And hopefully we'll be able to, I really hope we've got enough questions answered that we can simply move on to having the appellants and the respondents to simply use that time they have to make any rebuttals that they want to make. In the meantime, anyone from appellants, respondents, and of course, anyone attending this meeting or listening to the recording should feel free to send us briefs.
I've got like
again, I
starburst on my
those to,
cheek or
if
something.
at all possible, be put in before the close of business on Friday. Although
if she can't handle it, she does need to resign.
Meeting next Sunday, you will have an additional 7 days to do that. The only reason I'm asking that you try to get them in by Friday close of business is it would be helpful for us as a JC to be able to read them before the next meeting, just in case we have further questions. Okay, before we adjourn, let me ask, does anyone have any questions about this process? And if not, I want to thank you all for everything you're doing here. I know this is a very difficult thing, and I just hope we can keep the process as, I won't say pleasant because it's never a pleasant process, but as civil as possible. And I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope that we will be able to shortcut this process with this new procedure. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, with that established, I will formally move that we adjourn this hearing to reconvene 3 p.m. Central.
I want you guys to see the chat. Let me move this over. Alicia.
Thank you.
Alicia saw what I did. She said, I think Ken is conflating two different situations. He is. He's only arguing the December issue. That is not what Bill and Amy appealed. They appealed the November decision.
Sure.
Ken is completely lost here.
I vote yes.
Well, since you moved it and since Jim seconded it, I assume that you are voting for it. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Mary is such a sweetheart. Okay, let me, I'm going to keep the comments up. Why not? Because it makes it easier for people. Hold on, I need to take this jacket off because now I'm getting hot. It was chilly in here before. Okay. So, I forgot what I said I'd address. I know there was somebody in Twitch that I promised that once this was over, I would answer their question. Twitch is kind of different. Like, they're not used to me there, and questions what might seem obvious to you guys on YouTube's not quite so obvious on Twitch. So, yes, there you are. So, what the Twitch user asked me was, I believe, because I can't scroll up now, I'm so sorry. So, if I don't answer the right question, let me know. But you had asked me what my political views were. I am a hardcore radical libertarian. I would consider myself an anarcho-capitalist. I used to be the national secretary. I still consider myself the national secretary for the Libertarian National Committee, and I was removed for being a whistleblower and riding their ass over COVID and telling them that they were absolutely cowards in not responding to what the state was doing. And I hurt their feelings, and they said that hurting feelings was basically violence and aggression, so they threw me off. And I'm running to be reelected because, like, if you're too big of a baby that you can't handle a little criticism, as Mary Ruwert said to this LNC, she's the lady who was in charge of this meeting, she said, if you can't handle the criticism of your secretary who only does words, you really think that you're equipped to take on the state who backs up their words with actual violence? Perhaps all of you should consider serving the party in a different capacity. And she is absolutely right. So, now Ken's calling me. He's going to have to wait. Because unless he can come on the stream. If he wants to explain himself, I'll bring him on. I should, you know what? You guys want to hear from Ken? Let me text him and tell him I'm on stream. You want to come on? So we'll see. I'm sure you all want to talk to Ken. And if he wants to come on, I'll send him an invitation. Let's see what he says. Requetus, I said libertarianism, not liberalism, though libertarianism is classical liberalism, but classical liberalism is not a term anyone uses anymore. And because I think it makes the most moral sense. It's just what I think makes the most moral sense. My politics aren't about practicality, even though I do think it is practical. It's about moral. Okay, he said he shouldn't because it's a conflict of interest because it's still being litigated. Okay. I'm just going to tell him, okay, I respect that, but a lot of people want to talk to you. Because I do respect that. But he might not want to talk to me later because I'm not going to agree to keep it confidential. So when I text him to say, if you want to talk later, I'll say to him, I'm not promising to keep it confidential. So he probably will say then it's not appropriate for him to talk to me. Please don't view that as cowardice. I actually respect that position. I probably, if I were still recognized as being on the LNC by the corrupt LNC, then I would, what was I going to say? I would do the same thing probably. I probably wouldn't go on somebody's stream and talk about it either. So, I'll invite him when this is over, I guess, because I don't think he'll talk to me when I tell him I won't keep it confidential. He says he'll definitely come on after the JC decision and explain it. I said, let me put, okay, that's fair. I'll let everyone know. That's what I'm going to put here. And I'm also going to say here, better not to talk to me before, because I won't keep it confidential. To me before, because I can't keep it confidential. And if he says that's fine, he'll talk to me, I'll talk to him. But I don't want to put him in a bad position, because even though I'm mad at him about this, I still adore him. So I said, okay, that's fair. I'll let everyone know. Better not to talk to me before, because I can't keep it confidential. So I'll let you know what he says to that. But he said he'll definitely come on the show after the JC renders its decision. Disappointing only because it'd be great to talk to him, but completely fair for him to say that. Requetes, perhaps we could talk about that on another show. I have a Twitch streamer who had a question about property homesteading that we agreed to do a Twitch about on January 20th. If you shoot me an email, I wouldn't mind having that discussion with you. My email is pinkflameofliberty@gmail.com. We're kind of talking about a current controversy right now, so to go into that right now probably be really off topic from the people who came for this one discussion. But if you shoot me an email, I wouldn't mind. I live stream every day. I wouldn't mind having a discussion with you on that. So again, my email is pinkflameofliberty@gmail.com. And yeah, I think it's January 20th. I'll have to look at my calendar. Yeah. I just got a strange message I need to respond to that I can't share with you guys. So yeah, let me just respond to this. I'll do this really quickly. I'm sorry, I know it's kind of rude. Okay. Well, actually, I don't mind sharing this with you. I won't share who sent it to me. But apparently Carol Moore screenshots every single thing I do like a fucking barking moonbat and sends it to the LNC. And you want to know what my response was? Good. I said, I want the LNC to know I haven't shut up and I'm not cowed by those corrupt fuckers. But what a creepy, obsessed person. Carol, I'm not going to date you no matter how much you harass me. I know you might have learned from little boys that pulling the pigtails of girls will make them date you. I'm not going to date you. Sorry. Not going to sleep with you. Sorry, Carol. What a freak. What a freak. And of course, because she'll screenshot that, that is called sarcasm, Carol. Even though you did proposition me once, and you claim you didn't do it, you did. I don't care who believes me. I will take a lie detector test. If you pay, if I pass the test, you pay for it. If I fail the test, I pay for it. Take me up on the challenge. Because I can almost recite the conversation where you started saying, oh, you know, your boobs are so nice, and, you know, it's too bad you're married because, like, I find you really attractive type of thing. And I said to her, thank you very much, but I'm married. And at the time, I wasn't even coming to grips with myself that I was bisexual. So at the time, I said, I'm strictly heterosexual, but I find your compliments very flattering. And even if I were interested in women, I'm married and we don't have an open relationship. That's what I said to her. And immediately after that, she started harassing me. Don't tell, and those two aren't related. Plus, she also found out my abortion position. So it's a little bit of both. But no, she most definitely did hit on me. Let's change it to hit on me, because proposition is kind of maybe too specific, but she hit on me. I turned her down, but I turned her down gently by thanking her for her compliments. And at the time, I told her, even though it wasn't true, I was in self-denial, that, I wasn't into women at all. But now that I've admitted that, I'm not into her. Not into that woman. That is nuts. That is just nuts. And I don't even know what account she's copying me on, because I've blocked her. Everywhere I find her, I block her. But, she's got a sock somewhere, and I've got 5,000 friends. I can't possibly, I don't mind. See, this is the thing, narcissistic. It doesn't offend me. She's tried to say, this is what Carol tries to say. Because I've been saying she's been sexually harassing me for 4 years. She says that I'm saying her original hitting on me was harassment. No, it wasn't. How the hell do you know if someone's interested in you unless you approach them? I was not at all offended by her approaching me. That's how people hook up. That wasn't the sexual harassment. The sexual harassment was after I told her I wasn't interested, how she continued for 4 years to obsess about my tits. That is what is the sexual harassment. The original proposition was fine. And narcissistic is right. A lot of people hit on me. I don't get offended by that. I don't get offended by it at all. I'm like, it doesn't bother me. But she keeps saying that I said that original thing was the harassment. No, it isn't. I gave her props for being gutsy, It's hard to make the first move. That didn't offend me. I've been propositioned by plenty of women. When I used to be in a band, I was always the subject of the unicorn hunters. You know what I mean? The couple that's looking for the third. Like, I must have just looked like I had a horn sprouting out of my head, because I got propositioned by so many couples, and it was always be the woman that would be sent over to make the offer. And I was never, ever, ever offended by that. But yeah, man, I was totally the prey. I was totally the game of the unicorn hunters out there, man. But it didn't offend me. It didn't offend me at all. That's a compliment. It's a compliment when someone finds you attractive and wants to be with you. Anyway, enough about that nut. I feel bad for... She's in Delaware now, too. So it actually does tie into Delaware. I feel bad for Delaware, because that's such a small state. She really can cause some damage. She used to be in Washington, D.C., where all the other nuts were. That's where she belongs. She doesn't belong in sweet Delaware. Delaware is so beautiful. When I visited there, I wanted to move there. It was so gorgeous. Newcastle, particularly. I actually took a real estate brochure home with me. That's like how much I fell in love with it. And then COVID hit. Right, I visited Delaware right before COVID hit, and that put the brakes on that. Not that I would have been able to talk my husband into moving into Delaware, but I took a real estate brochure. Not Will McVeigh, Derp, the old secretary, the sweetheart, Dale. Dale will tell you, there was this bed and breakfast there that I was like, oh my God, we could move here and run this bed and breakfast together. It was so beautiful. It was downtown Newcastle. It was gorgeous. I loved it. I would visit Delaware again in a heartbeat, but I would like to go not for a convention, just to go sightseeing. I absolutely loved it. But anyway, so what I guess got decided at the end there, I'm still a little unclear, is judicial committee members will write out their questions. They will submit them to Mr. Hines and Mr. McVeigh, who can farm them out to other people to speak on their behalf, or they can write a response plus other people. Then, the JC will review the responses. God, I'm burping. Sorry. We'll review the responses, and then they'll come back next Sunday. And if they have any follow-up questions, it's to be a short meeting before the spanking of Joshua Smith. And I hope the censure of Joshua Smith, because they will censure him, Probably, maybe 50-50 chance, because there's some people who said, no, in Massachusetts is the one they said they're going to refuse to attend. No, they'll all be at the Smith one. I hope that gets appealed. I hope that gets appealed. I hope every single shitty decision of this LNC between now and May gets appealed. Count me in to sign any petition to appeal. Whitney needs to be censured for sure for that rude-ass email she sent. But Joshua's the only one on the LNC who has the guts to move. And if she doesn't get censored, let's appeal that too. Let's appeal every shitty decision of this LNC. Let's get a standing 10% of signatures and appeal every fucking shitty decision of this LNC. Because they're terrible. You see my little dog walking back there? I don't know if you can only see his tail right there. Skippy, come here. Come here. I want to show you. Come here. Okay, you see. Oh, he's not in the camera yet. Come here, Skippy. I want to lift you up. I want to show you to everybody. Oh, with my broken arm, that's going to be tough. I don't know if I can lift him. Okay, I lifted him just with my left arm. Okay, look at this little guy. But I want to show you. We took him camping, and we don't want him to get sap on the bottom of his thing. So we bought him this little shirt, and it's a little gay pride shirt. It says all for love, love for all. It's a little doggy gay pride shirt. And he refuses to let us take it off. He's had this shirt on since August. He will not let us take this shirt off. And I'm like, Skippy, are you trying to tell us something? It's okay if you're gay, Skippy. It really is. It's okay. He is so cute. He's my little rescue. And he loves me. Okay. So I am going to see if there's any questions or anything I need to address. Otherwise, I'll be getting off. I have some phone calls I've got to do. I've got some bylaws to review. If anyone, the Arizona convention went fantastic. There is going to be a patron-only video that talks more candidly about what happened in Arizona. None of it is tea. None of it was drama, but it's more strategic. So if you want to know more details other than, yay, it was great, kind of cheerleading rah-rah video I did already that's public, for as little as $1 a month, you can become a patron. It's patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. We do have Patreon-only content. It's usually just book discussions, not usually LP stuff. But this time, this video I recorded will be patron-only. And you can ask questions of me in Patreon. So I'm going to upload that right after here. I recorded it while I was waiting in the airport. If I seem a little drowsy, it's because Valium. And we'll see what else. Tuesday night, if all of my gear comes in. Oh, it did come in. I got the Amazon package today. Unless work intrudes or some other affiliate blows up, I am doing another episode, comrade, of the Unlibertarian Activities Commission. Because that was just too much fun. And yeah, there's a lot of, thank you, Shannon, for plugging the Patreon. We do a lot of book things. So we're just finishing up Radicals for Capitalism, huge book, took forever. The next one we're doing is Michael Shermer's The Problem of Political Authority. And then I want to show you this book I just got. I don't know if we're going to do this as Patreon only. We might. Okay, let Skippy down. He's getting restless. Get down there. Get down there. Okay, I got this book. And because we're doing this the early 1970s as our history project, it's The Making of the President, 1972. And I think we could learn a lot about Nixon and all of that through this. So I don't know if this is going to be patron only, but I just got this in. As you could tell, I love buying the former library books. I particularly like buying the former library ones that are super old and still have the little card catalog thing in the back. And, okay, the picture on the front of this isn't nude, so I can show you. We have an Ayn Rand interview to go over in this issue of Playboy. maybe I'll do that later tonight if I have time. It's the March 1964 Playboy with the Girls of Russia in it, but we're not going to be going over the Girls of Russia. I'm not going to say I'm not going to look at the Girls of Russia on my own time, but we will be doing the Ayn Rand interview and this old issue of Playboy. If you're wondering why it looks waterlogged, it's because I got it for cheap on eBay for being waterlogged, because apparently this particular issue of Playboy is a collector's edition, and a mint one cost way too much money. But let's just say I've looked at some of the pictures and women did not shave then. Let's just leave it at that. Okay. Let's see. What else there are here? I think I'm just scrolling up here a little bit because I think I got it all. I thank you all for the super chats. The super chats go to support my campaign. Oh God, now he's barking. Give me 1 second. This dog has me wrapped around his paw. You want in, you want out, you want in, you want out. Come on, go on. Go on, I know you're gonna want back. Go, come on in, Xena. Okay, so the other dog, I can't lift her up. She's too heavy, because she's a big beagle. But Xena's now in the room. Xena, you wanna come up here? Xena, here. Jump here. Xena, come on, here. No. Here, come on, jump up. I don't know, it's not enough. You could see a little bit, see her little sweet face. She's such a good beagle. You're such a good beagle. Okay, you can go now. Oh boy. All right, so where did DL do great? If you mean in my appeal, yes. If you mean in Georgia, I'm sure he did. Now Xena wants to go out, but she won't bark. She's not as rude as Skippy is. And yeah, I heard DL did wonderful in Georgia. I'm going to be working. The reason why I think I might not be able to stream later tonight is I do need to work out the convention calendar and figure out where I'm going and where DL's going. So, yeah, I'm going to get off now. I do have a phone call that I need to look up when the time is, and maybe there will be a stream tonight, but I do have a lot of bylaws to work on. So I thank you, everybody, and I will talk at you soon. And there's no closing credits or anything this time. This was a long enough stream. And, oh, tomorrow I will be streaming the Joshua Smith spanking. I will be streaming that, and you could bet the snark will be heavy because, as Joshua called them, they're a bunch of cowardly fucking psychopaths. He didn't say fucking, but still. Bye-bye.